Chapter 700. He laughed coldly and said, "The Black Devils have assassinated many people before, but we have never killed a sword sovereign." He looked at Tianbu Hui coldly and said, "I can assassinate a saber emperor. I can even assassinate a martial monarch. However, to a sword sovereign who is full of sword energy. Assassinate? Master Tian, do you know what a sword sovereign is?" The Black Devil mocked him mercilessly. A sword sovereign is the sharpest in the world. No matter how good an assassin is at concealment, he can only fight a sword sovereign head-on. You will never assassinate. Do you understand? Hearing this, everyone nodded in agreement. The Black Devil was right. Even against a normal supreme martial artist, he could use a sneak attack. As long as he was good at it, he could do something unexpected. However, a sword sovereign, a sword was the sharpest weapon in the world. Due to the sharpness of the sword, a person who cultivated to the sword emperor level was equivalent to turning himself into a sword. How could he launch a sneak attack against a divine sword that was constantly revealing its edge and choosing who to kill at any given moment? Tianbu Hui said plainly, "Lord Black Devil, you have misunderstood me. We can't assassinate in the battle. Therefore I am talking about assassinate. Assassinate. In other words, there is a way to kill this sword sovereign at the start of the battle, even if we have to pay a price." Hearing this, everyone fell into deep thought. The Black Devil thought for a while and said slowly, "If that's the case, it's not impossible for us Black Devils. However, the price we have to pay will be very high. What is it?" Tianbu Hui was excited. He was most worried about the sword sovereign Gudu Xing. The battle of the martial emperors seemed to be at a lower level. However, it was a strong force. Since they had lost the battle of the martial emperors, they couldn't lose the battle of the martial emperors. "Lord Black Devil, don't worry. Since the Black Devils have paid the price, the Black Devils will be compensated accordingly in the next 3 days," Tianbu Hui said seriously. He knew that the Black Devil was prejudiced against him. Therefore he swore an oath. The Black Devil snorted and said after a while, "The Black Devils have 5 gold-ranked assassins and 3 jade token assassins. We need to use these forces to attack together. I will fight the sword sovereign Gudu Xing head-on. Then the others will take the opportunity to attack. However, I am already a martial monarch. One of the 3 supreme jade tokens is also a martial monarch." The Black Demon frowned and said, "How can I fight in the battle of martial emperors? That's a problem." Tianbu Hui frowned. This was indeed a problem. If there were no enforcers around, this would be possible. However, the law enforcement officers were present. How could he hide this from them? Once he was discovered. Wouldn't that be, unless of course he'll be demoted to the emperor level. This way your cultivation will be greatly damaged but your mind will still be at the monarch level. If you fight against an emperor level expert like this, you will still be able to say something even if you are discovered, the Black Devil coldly said. But who would be willing to lower their own level after reaching the monarch level? Everyone's eyes lit up. He frowned deeply again. That's right, a monarch level expert. Who would dare to lower his rank? And it was before the final battle? Tianbu Hui furrowed his brows and tried to think of a solution. "Unless," Black Demon said, "unless you have the bone-gnawing heart-burning grass and the 7 wonders Ling Long flower. With the 2 of them working together, he could consume them immediately after the battle to recover his strength. Other than that, it's impossible for me to make such a sacrifice." Instantly, everyone looked at Tianbu Hui with sparkling eyes. Everyone knew that the bone-gnawing heart-burning grass and the 7 wonders Ling Long flower were the most precious treasures of the Tian clan. Furthermore, they were also heavenly treasures with miraculous effects. The Black Devil said plainly, "If there's such a guarantee, I can use all my strength in this battle. Then I'll split into teams and scatter among the emperors. I'll take advantage of the chaos to kill Gudu Xing. Furthermore, Quan has already found the best place to ambush. The battle between the emperors is also the time for him to show his prowess. As long as Gudu Xing dies, the battle between the emperors will be won," the Black Devil said plainly. "Of course, there's also a risk. For example, whether the bone-gnawing heart-burning grass and the 7 wonders Ling Long flower are really as the rumors say. That's something we can't be sure of. Of course, if you don't agree, just pretend that I didn't say anything." Tianbu Hui was instantly pushed to the edge of the fire. He had not foreseen that the matter would come back to him so violently, when he had brought it up. The bone-gnawing heart-burning grass and the 7 wonders Ling Long flower had been preserved by the Tian clan for 1,500 years. Moreover, they had spent a lot of effort to cultivate them to maturity. This war was related to the future generations. Therefore Tianbu Hui had brought them along. However, how could he bear to give away such precious treasures? However, if he didn't agree now, Tianbu Hui didn't even dare to think about the consequences if they failed. After thinking for a long time, Tianbu Hui finally gritted his teeth and said, "Since Lord Black Devil is so confident, the Tian clan will contribute the bone-gnawing heart-burning grass and the 7 wonders Ling Long flower." "What's wrong with that? Lord Tian is indeed righteous," the Black Devil said sarcastically. "But how can I trust you?" Tianbu Hui's eyes were red. "As long as you give me the medicine, I'll immediately destroy my martial monarch level cultivation right here," the Black Devil said viciously. "All right." The two of them raised their hands and clapped. The onlookers were impressed. The Black Devil was indeed the most ruthless person in the 3 heavens. He was willing to pay such a price to kill Gu Du Xing. Tianbu Hui's heart was bleeding, but he still had to smile. After a while the medicine was brought over. As expected, the Black Demon crippled his martial monarch cultivation in front of everyone. He spat out a few mouthfuls of blood and gasped for breath. It took him a while to regain his breath. A martial monarch came forward to check his pulse and nodded at Tianbu Hui. Tianbu Hui was delighted. The Black Devil had already fallen to the martial emperor level. "Lord Black Devil, thank you for your hard work." Tianbu Hui bowed deeply. He thought to himself, "After you kill Gu Du Xing, you won't have the chance to use any treasures. I'll kill you immediately. Won't that be enough?" The Black Devil panted for a while and said, "Don't forget about tomorrow's arrangement. Don't gather the people of the Black Devil clan together. That would be a waste of treasures and a waste of sacrifices." Then he paused. He said, "There's no need to divide the battle between martial emperors into several rounds. Let's just do it like the battle between martial kings. Chaos is the key to victory." Everyone understood that an assassin's killing move was to take advantage of the chaos. If there were fewer people, they wouldn't be able to hide themselves. How could they assassinate? They might as well call it a duel, Tianbu Hui said sincerely this time, "That's for sure." The Black Devil kept the bone-gnawing heart-burning grass and the 7 wonders Ling Long flower. "Goodbye." He walked out of the door. "Let's arrange for tomorrow's arrangement." Tianbu Hui's eyes flashed with a sinister light. "We can only win tomorrow's battle. We can't lose." The sky was just starting to brighten. However, a strange scene appeared beside the Lake of Despair. Snowflakes were still floating in the sky, and the sunlight illuminated the horizon. It was snowing on one side of the lake. Furthermore, the hot steam from the Lake of Despair rose. When it came into contact with the sunlight and the snowflakes, it strangely turned into a colorful and magnificent sight. Looking at it, it was like a dream. Suddenly, an empty castle seemed to have appeared between the 2 supreme martial artists' steels. Inside, there were countless pavilions and buildings. Colorful lights flashed and blurred. In this empty castle there were people coming and going. There were white-robed immortals. They floated around gracefully. It was like a celestial palace in the heavens. Regardless of whether it was the 2 parties, the big clans or the enforcers, they were all dazzled. They looked on as if they were in a dream. When the sun rose, this scene slowly disappeared. Everyone seemed to have woken up from a dream. They were still reminiscing about it. Yang was stunned. He was confused. These empty pavilions, why do they look so real? Although it was many times smaller than the real world, but there was no need to doubt the quality of the existence of each and every one of the characters. Yang didn't believe that this was an illusion. This was especially so when the 2 supreme martial artists were confronting each other. Could it really be fake? If it was real, then where is this place? Just as everyone was confused, the white-bearded enforcer coughed and said, "The battle between the martial emperors begins today." Before he finished speaking, Tianbu Hui said, "Enforcer, I have a request. Can the battle between the martial emperors be decided in one battle?" The white-bearded enforcer was stunned. He frowned. He was a little unhappy. If that's the case, why did they set the rules in advance? Why don't they all fight at the same time? Once one party dies, it'll be over. The battle between the martial kings was changed once. Now, the battle between the martial emperors is changed again? Is there an end to this? He suppressed his anger and said, "We have to ask the other party." Mo Tianji smiled and said, "Since Brother Tian has such an interest, we have to accompany you. We have to do it even if we can't." The white-bearded enforcer was depressed. "Since that's the case, let's start the battle." After he finished speaking, he snorted and sat down on the stage. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and said, "Since that's the case, let's also decide the battle between the martial emperors." He had made a decision. Tianbu Hui was elated and said, "Yes." He waved his hand and the martial emperors behind him walked out. Chuyang, Gu Duxing and the rest stood together and watched. Black and white robes of different colors were mixed together messily. It wasn't like the battle between the martial kings, where the clans formed a team. On the other side, under Gu Duxing's lead, the 10 martial emperors also walked out slowly. There were a total of 134 martial emperors in the opposing camp. More than 30 of them looked arrogant and disdainful. It was as if they were afraid that others didn't know that they were from the Sure clan of the upper 3 heavens. Both parties faced each other. They were 300 feet apart and stood quietly. Gu Duxing stood at the front and whistled. He said sadly, "I didn't expect that I, Gu Duxing, would be able to participate in the battle between the martial emperors today. Life is like a dream, nothing more than this." Chuyang was also a little emotional. When he met Gu Duxing 2 years ago, he was only a small martial ancestor. Now he was representing the various clans and leading hundreds of martial emperors. Furthermore, the clan leaders of the various clans were also under his control. No one was dissatisfied. Gu Duxing sighed. However, the light in his eyes became brighter and brighter. Finally, they turned into 2 streaks of sword radiance. He said coldly, "The earlier you die, the earlier you can reincarnate. Come." Chapter 701. Both sides slowly moved towards each other, their auras heavy and heavy. It was very different from the opening of the Battle of the Martial Kings. If not for the heavy killing intent on everyone's faces, one would almost think that this was a group of friends who had arranged to meet here. Emole clutched Dong Wuxiang's arm tightly, her eyes fixed on the arena. She didn't even blink as her breathing quickened. Dong Wuxiang looked at her strangely. What's wrong with this girl? Hadn't she always been bold and daring? Why was she so nervous today? Dong Wuxiang still felt a little uncomfortable with a young lady hugging his arm in public. After struggling for a while, he saw that Emole was hugging him tightly, as if she didn't feel anything at all. He couldn't bear it and stopped struggling. He slowly reached out and touched the back of Emole's hand, holding it comfortingly. Before Emole could say anything, Dong Wuxiang had already retracted his hand with a red face, his heart beating twice as fast. This kind of action was very easy for any man, but when Dong Wuxiang did it, the meaning was completely different. God knew how much courage he had to muster to be able to hold a young lady's hand in public. Emole looked at the back of her hand in a daze, as if Dong Wuxiang's warmth still lingered on it. She couldn't help but feel warm and calm. She quietly raised her eyes and looked at Dong Wuxiang, only to see that his shoulders were broad and his back was thick, as if he had already held up a solid sky for her, completely covering her from all the wind and rain between heaven and earth. Instantly, she seemed to have someone to rely on and was no longer so afraid. She couldn't help but gently lean on his chest. At this moment, her heart was calm. There was no more panic or worry. There was only her blessing for her father. "It can do it. Can definitely do it." There was a long and sinister laugh, and the black demon, who was among the crowd of martial emperors, shouted hoarsely, "Kill!" At the same time, a lonely sword intent suddenly filled the sky without warning. The wind, snow, and wind in midair actually let out a loud clang at this moment. Everyone present was shocked. From martial monarchs and below, everyone's swords were automatically unsheathed at the same time, shining with a cold light. One sword was above the wind and clouds of heaven and earth. The sword chi of the unique and righteous suddenly appeared in the air. The moment it appeared, it was like a sovereign descending upon the world. The sword light flashed. It streaked across the blue dome of heaven and earth in a lonely and forlorn manner. Then a 5th-grade emperor-level expert on the opposite side was quietly cut into 2 pieces with a schwa sound. He was taking a step forward. Then his upper body slowly fell to the ground. 2 feet. However, it was as if they had taken root in the snow. He didn't even have time to let out a scream before he was dead. In fact, the domain of the martial emperor hadn't even had the time to rise. Immediately after, a black-clothed figure appeared, exuding an awe-inspiring loneliness. He appeared in front of the enemy camp. Gu Duxing was expressionless. His face was like ice, his eyes were like black ice, his body was like ice, and his sword was like an ice dragon. In this vast world of ice and snow he came flying. The black dragon sword let out a sharp sword cry. He wanted to move unhindered and wreak havoc everywhere. This was the moment. Tianbu Hui shouted in his heart, "Good chance." Gu Duxing had already gone into battle alone. All the martial emperor's eyes flashed fiercely. They all saw the sword sovereign who had appeared in the name of the killing god and was looking for sacrifices. There was fear, and murderous intent. Good chance. The Black Devil shouted, "Kill." Tianbu Hui excitedly slapped his big chest, making a loud sound. However, Tianbu Hui's mouth suddenly opened wide. He looked at the scene in disbelief. It was as if he had been completely frozen. He didn't move at all. How is this possible? After a long while, he trembled violently. His face suddenly turned red. He cried out, "Black Devil? What? Devil? I'm going to kill you. 8 generations of your ancestors. You despicable traitor." Whoa. Behind him, everyone was dumbfounded. Even the martial sage from the Sher clan from the upper 3 heavens opened his eyes and mouth in disbelief. This was too unbelievable. In the field, the Black Devil gave the order. All the Black Devil assassins, including the remaining 17 martial emperors, attacked at the same time. The sword light was sharp and the angle was tricky. It killed people like cutting vegetables. Furthermore, wherever the sword light went, it was invincible. There was no one who could withstand the sword light. Heads rolled, blood splattered, and limbs splattered everywhere. It was a hellish scene. This was a textbook example of an assassination. Accurate, sharp, killing in one strike. Everyone who saw this scene understood why the Black Devil was able to dominate the upper 3 heavens. How could he be able to dominate the upper 3 heavens as an assassin, who was almost a sacrificial warrior? This kind of assassination method was really elusive. Killing the first batch of people was nothing. They were caught off guard. However, killing the second batch was a demonstration of their strength. They flashed around like ghosts. Their swords flashed. They used the dead bodies to hide themselves. They attacked from all directions. They attacked from all sorts of angles. They attacked from all directions. Killing. One of the Hamo assassins was clearly charging forward. Everyone thought he was going to rush forward and kill them, but he instantly retreated with the tip of his sword pointing backwards. Everyone thought he was going to catch the people behind him off guard, but his sword came out from under his ribs and pierced the throat of the person on the left. He was holding the sword with his right hand. This sword move was to use one's arm to form a circle around oneself. Then, from the strangest angle, it was to kill someone. There was another person whose sword was broken. He retreated hurriedly. However, his leg flew up. A complete sword suddenly shot out from his leg and pierced the heart of the enemy who was chasing after him. There were still a few Black Devil assassins who were moving. However, they suddenly gathered from all directions. A few swords pierced the body of the enemy furthest away at the same time. The Black Devil was like a fish in water. With a flash of his sword, 2 people beside him were cut into 4 pieces. Then he pulled his sword out from the mouths of the enemies on his right. The sword on his side was still glowing with blood. A black dagger suddenly appeared in his left hand. It was dim, but it stabbed into the throat of an emperor-level expert on his left. His left hand was counterattacked. He retracted it. The dagger and sword flew out of his hand at the same time. They flew to the back of the group like shooting stars. They killed 2 emperor-level experts who were still in shock. 4 to 5 enemies attacked at the same time. The Black Devil was unarmed. Suddenly he leaned back. His hands and feet touched the ground at the same time. 4 to 5 people sneered and rushed over angrily. Suddenly there was a bang from the Black Devil's mouth. Countless needles as thin as cow's hair shot out. They hit the faces of these emperor-level experts. Suddenly the 4 to 5 people screamed at the same time. They covered their faces and rolled back. Their faces were numb. Their eyes were bloodshot. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that these people's eyes were already damaged. However, they did not roll back. The Black Devil who was on the ground had already circled around. A long sword appeared in his hands and feet. He spun on the ground like a praying mat. Puff, puff, puff. His 8 legs were left there. Then he suddenly stood up. The enemies around him roared and surrounded him. However, they were met with a ball of black fog from his body. The sword light of the black fog flashed. Then screams sounded again. The Black Devil's assassination no longer cared about cultivation level. Those who were in his assassination range would die without a doubt. However, this scene stunned everyone on both sides. Because they were killed. They were not killed by Chu Yang's people. They were killed by their own people. In other words, the people they killed were people from the Tian clan, Zhao clan, Li clan, and Li clan. The 2 clan, and even the reinforcements from the upper 3 heavens, the only people they did not kill were Chu Yang's people. The black waves formed a tidal wave. No, it should be a blood wave. Gu Duxing only killed 1 person. Then there was a change in the situation. The other side started fighting fiercely. If not for Chu Yang's reminder, Gu Duxing would have been stunned. But with this reminder in front of him, Gu Duxing remained as calm as ice at this moment. He raised his sword. Kill? Striking while the iron was hot, he rushed into the enemy group like a whirlwind. The 15 Emperor-level experts behind him rushed in with a loud bang. Tianbu Hui's body was cold. It was as if he had fallen into an ice cave. His mind was in a mess. He could not understand why the Black Devil would betray him. What? The Black Devil had enmity with the Dong clan, Luo clan, Ji clan, Gu clan and King of Hell Chu. They could not live under the same sky as the Mo clan. They were supposed to be the most reliable and the most solid allies. They actually betrayed him at this moment. Even if the Li clan suddenly surrendered or the two clans suddenly knelt down to the enemy, or even if the heavens collapsed in front of Tianbu Hui, he would not be as shocked as he was now. Because there was no reason for this. Everyone could betray him but not the Black Devil. Tianbu Hui even felt that even if he cooperated with Mo Tianji, this was possible. But the Black Devil? But now the Black Devil had betrayed him. Where could he find a reason for this? There were a total of 137 Emperor-level experts. But 17 Black Devil assassins suddenly turned on them. They stood there like melons and chopped down 43 Emperor-level experts at lightning speed. More than 10 people died in the hands of the Black Devil alone. After this round of brutal assassination, everyone finally regained their senses. They fought desperately with the Black Devil assassins. As for the Emperor-level experts on Gu Duxing's side, not many of them faced the enemy. The most hated thing in the martial world was to be stabbed in the back by one's allies in a battle of life and death. This was the biggest taboo in the entire heavens. The Black Devil had committed the biggest taboo in the martial world. What? Black Devil? What? Tianbu Hui stood up suddenly and asked sternly. As soon as he spoke, he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. The Black Devil was now in a tight encirclement. Everyone did not care about their own safety. Their eyes were red as they fought with all their might. The Black Devil did not make a sound. His hair was disheveled but his eyes were still cold. His black robe was still cold. Terrifying. Screams filled the air. Almost at the same time, two Black Devil assassins were chopped into meat paste by the Emperor-level experts. They slashed the ground with all their might. They did not care about anything else. In fact, even though Gu Duxing was leading the Emperor-level experts to kill them from behind, they still didn't care. They didn't block. Even if they had to pay with their lives, they just wanted to stab the Mo assassins with their swords. Their hatred for the Black Devil had reached a point where it could not be resolved in their lifetime. If they died today they would not be able to rest in peace. Gu Duxing let out a long howl and slashed an Emperor-level expert who was besieging an assassin of the Mo clan into two halves. However, the upper half of the Emperor-level expert's body still flew out with all his might. Even though the lower half of his body had already been separated, he still pounced forward ferociously and bit the shoulder of the Mo clan assassin. He was already dead and his internal organs were flowing out of his broken body. However, his eyes were still wide open in anger. The Mo assassin desperately slashed at his corpse with his sword and palm, turning his body into pieces. However, his teeth were still tightly bitten into the assassin's shoulder, sinking deep into it. Even when the Black Devil assassin was chopped into meat paste, his head was still cut open by someone. His teeth were still inside. This showed how deep his hatred was. Kill the Black Devil first. Tianbu Hui shouted angrily. Kill them. No matter the cost. We have to kill him. This be asterisk starred. This be asterisk starred. This be asterisk starred. Tianbu Hui shouted in despair, Black Devil. Your 18 generations of ancestors. They had already lost this battle. Everyone could see that. However, no one expected them to lose like this. The battle was even more tragic. All the enemy experts did not care about anything else. Other than attacking the Black Devil, they did not do anything else. When they saw Gu Duxing and the rest, they tried their best to hide. If they could not hide, they tried their best to attack the Black Devil. The Black Devil's cultivation level had just dropped. He had lost his advantage in assassination and was in imminent danger. However, he gritted his teeth and fought with all his might. Even when he was surrounded by enemies, he did not retreat a single step. His body was already injured. Gu Duxing charged forward crazily. However, under the desperate attacks of the enemy, he could not break through. Suddenly, the Black Devil jumped up, covered in blood. His sword flashed and he slashed down again. A human head flew into the air, dripping with blood. However, a deep wound appeared on the Black Demon's body. He suddenly screamed. His voice was still clear on the chaotic battlefield. Everyone could hear it. This voice was still hoarse and sinister. It was still calm. However, it was filled with an indescribable feeling. Dong Wuxiang. Amole is my daughter. Don't let my daughter down. The Black Devil screamed. Don't let my daughter down. What I owe your Dong clan, can I repay in this battle? The Black Devil screamed. Don't vent your anger on my daughter. Don't bully my lay. Mo Tianji. What I owe your Mo clan I'll repay in this battle. My daughter will be your sister-in-law in the future. Don't bully her. The Black Demon roared loudly. His flesh and blood splattered everywhere and blood spurted out. King of Hell Chu. I'll hand my daughter over to your brothers. The Black Devil screamed and spat out a mouthful of blood. Are you going to stop them? For the sake of this old man's battle today. Fulfill their wishes. Fulfill my daughter's wishes. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. The Black Devil screamed crazily, I owe Chong Tian. I've repaid everything. I've repaid everything. Leia. Leia. Don't cry. Remember your mother's words. I'll be with your mother. Don't worry about us. Dong Wushang. Don't let my daughter down. Don't let my daughter down. Chapter 702. Cries of agony reverberated through the skies. Dong Wushang felt as if he was struck by lightning. He turned around abruptly and looked at Mo Laer beside him. Mo Laer's red lips were wide open. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Endless regret, sorrow, and despair appeared in her eyes at the same time. She had never thought that her father would use such a decisive method to fight for her happiness. She stood there in a daze. She only felt that her mind was blank. What kind of love was so expensive? It needed to be exchanged for by sacrificing her own father? Even if this was exchanged for happiness, was this still happiness? I know that the Black Devils are already at their wits' end. The Zhao and Li clans have already become the vassals of the Tian clan. Tu Qianhao is already dead, but the Tu clan has reinforcements from the upper three heavens. Li Xiongtu's clan has the support of the upper three heavens. The only clan that has no backing and is slightly weaker is the Black Devils. And in this battle they were even sent as the main force. Tian Buhui's intention was not simply to destroy the clans of Dong Wushang, Mo Tianji, and the rest. He also wanted to wear down the Black Devils. Whether the Black Devils fought or not, only death awaited them. There was no way forward and no way back. Since death awaited either way, why not use my death to fulfill my daughter's wish? This should be her father's entire mindset. So he thought this way and did this. Mo Laer trembled all over. But I can't accept this. Although I know that it's a dead end, I still can't accept that my father died for me. If I had known earlier, I would have rather destroyed my clan and my father together. Father, you've been a tyrant all your life. You've never cared about other people's thoughts and feelings. At this moment you're still so stubborn. You're still so domineering for once. But, what about me? How do I have the face to continue living in this world? How do I have the face to accept the happiness that you exchanged for with your life? Mo Laer took a step forward. Her face suddenly turned as white as snow. Then it turned red like a raging fire. Then she suddenly cried out and spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Her body trembled and her lips moved as if she wanted to say something. But when she opened her mouth, it turned into a weak moan. Then another mouthful of blood quietly slid out of her lips. In the next moment she silently fell to the ground. He fainted. Dong Wushang subconsciously hugged her. His heart was in a mess for a moment. He finally knew who she was, young Black Devil. But now he really couldn't remember anything about the terrifying legend of the Black Demon. He only knew that the person in his arms was a woman. This was a woman who needed his care, protection, and comfort. The battlefield was even more tragic. The Black Demon's mask had already fallen off, revealing a skinny face. His face was cold and expressionless. The expression in his eyes was still dark, cold, and calm. His body was already covered with wounds. But he didn't even frown. Black Demon. Tell me why. Tian Buhui's desperate and furious voice could be heard. Why? The Black Demon muttered to himself. Then he suddenly laughed towards the sky. Although his laughter was still dark, it was a joyous laughter. Tian Buhui, I Hayamo have two choices. The Black Demon laughed as he continued to move around. Firstly, my daughter, my family, and I will all sacrifice ourselves for you, Tian Buhui. The second choice is to sacrifice myself for my daughter's happiness. Furthermore, I can protect my daughter. The Black Demon was very happy. He even laughed slyly. Tian Buhui, why do you think I'm doing this? Tian Buhui was so angry that his body trembled. He shouted, if you don't do this, you can still protect your family and your daughter. Bullshit. The black demon cursed. Another blade was stabbed in his body. He shouted coldly and stabbed his sword into the chest of a martial emperor. Tianbu Hui, you have already acknowledged Shi Changfeng as your godfather. Do you think I don't know? Do you think I don't know that you have already formulated a plan to destroy the black demon? The black demon isn't good at killing people. He's good at concealing himself. Ha ha ha, when you and Shi Changfeng were formulating this plan, did you think that I would be right above your heads? Although I am an assassin, how can a despicable person like you be worthy of me sacrificing myself for you? The black demon stood up. His skinny body was covered in blood. He laughed towards the sky. You're not worthy. You're not worthy. Tianbu Hui's handsome face became twisted. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. Kill him. The scene was already extremely chaotic. There were less than 40 people left on Tianbu Hui's side. On the other hand, there were only 2 people left from the Black Demon clan. This included the Black Demon himself and the Supreme Assassin who had just fallen from the Martial Monarch level. Gu Duxing's sword was like the wind, rain, and fog. He fought his way in. However, these martial emperors seemed to have lost their minds. They didn't care about him at all. They risked their lives just to hit the Black Demon, kick him, stab him, slash him, and even bite him. One of them flew towards the Black Demon on his sword. Gu Duxing intercepted him in midair. With a slash of his sword, this person was sliced into 2. However, his upper body still carried a bright sword radiance. He rushed into the Black Demon's battle circle and attacked. You have your difficulties, but we have our worries too. You don't want to sacrifice yourself for Tianbu Hui, but do we deserve to die because of your betrayal? With a loud boom, the Black Demon groaned. He lifted his head and spat out a mouthful of blood. A few streaks of sword radiance had already arrived in front of him. He screamed in pain. The Supreme Elder of the Black Demon clan looked at the 2 swords that had already pierced his chest with a ferocious expression. He laughed and shouted, Listen to your father. Then he used his 2 hands to grab the swords that had pierced his heart. With a snap, the swords of the 2 martial emperors were broken. They couldn't help but rush forward. This Supreme Assassin laughed sinisterly. He pulled out the 2 broken swords that had pierced his heart and said coldly, Come with me. With 2 slashes, the tip of the swords that carried the blood of his heart pierced the chests of the 2 martial emperors. The 3 of them screamed at the same time. They used the last of their strength to stab and slash each other with their broken swords. When they fell to the ground at the same time, they had already turned into 3 piles of minced meat. On the other side, the Black Demon's flesh and blood were flying everywhere. He was in imminent danger. Emole had just woken up. When she saw this scene, she screamed in pain and fainted again. She was still in a coma. Blood kept coming out of her mouth. Dong Wuxiang's clothes were dyed red. Blood dripped onto the ground. Gu Duxing. Chu Yang let out a long howl and shouted, The Black Devil can't die. Get him out of there for me. Even if he wants to die, he can't die now. Chu Yang's heart was burning. He ordered repeatedly. Don't save him. Mo Tianji wanted to stop Chu Yang from speaking, but it was too late. He couldn't help but sigh. Gu Duxing let out a long cry. Suddenly, the lonely sword intent filled the sky again. At the same time, the world became hazy. It was as if everyone had forgotten something. Sword intent of oblivion. Gu Duxing, the sword sovereign with 2 talents, used his true trump card for the first time in his life. Sword of solitude, sword of oblivion. They were displayed on one of his swords at the same time. He was cold, lonely, oblivion, lonely, and ethereal. However, he was as fast as lightning. Using a posture as if he was sleepwalking, he killed his way in from an unbelievable angle. Slash, 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 slash. The 4 martial emperors put up their protective domains to support the attacks from the outside. They only attacked the Black Demon crazily. However, Gu Duxing's Black Dragon Sword seemed to ignore the domains. It pierced through their bodies one by one. Then it kept going in. The 4 martial emperors only felt a chill in their hearts. They were awakened by the sword. Just as they were about to go all out, a lonely sword intent suddenly exploded in their hearts. Their internal organs were shattered at the same time. However, they still had a trace of rationality left. They wanted to go all out, but the sword intent of oblivion had already filled their minds. It was as if at this moment, they were suddenly muddled and forgotten. Then before they could do anything, they fell down in despair. Gu Duxing's black clothes were completely soaked in blood the moment he attacked. His sword was like the wind. Without stopping, he killed 1 person and entered the innermost part of the encirclement. Outside, Dozens of martial emperors launched their strongest attacks at the same time to support Gu Duxing. At this moment, the black demon was already at the end of his rope. With a loud cry, his left hand was chopped off from his shoulder by a sword. The black demon's body trembled. 3 swords stabbed towards his forehead, heart, and throat at the same time. The black demon no longer had any strength to block, parry, or dodge. But right at this moment, Gu Duxing's solitary and emotionless sword intent suddenly filled up the battlefield. The sword light flew up like a dream. When the 3 swords reached their targets, they were inexplicably broken. Then Gu Duxing's sword turned into a bolt of lightning. Poof, poof, poof. 3 heads jumped up in the air. Gu Duxing's free left hand had already grabbed the black demon's belt. When he grabbed it, the belt broke. The black demon's clothes were already torn. Gu Duxing frowned. He continued to attack with his sword. His hand grabbed the black demon's right shoulder again. With a long roar, the sword light turned into a round pillar of light. It was bright and resplendent. Gu Duxing held his sword in one hand and the black demon in the other. He was like a lonely dragon as he soared into the sky. Kill him! Kill him! Kill him! Tianbu jumped up and down as he shouted crazily. However, he could no longer do so. There were less than 20 martial emperors left. They were surrounded by more than 80 martial emperors. Their swords and sabers came down on them. The saber light was like a waterfall and the sword light was like rain. There were continuous screams. The last 3 martial emperors stood upright. They looked in the direction where Gu Duxing had left with the black demon. Their faces were filled with unwillingness. The martial emperors slashed at them with their swords and sabers. However, they were not met with any resistance. Only then did they know that the 3 martial emperors had already stopped breathing. Chapter 703. Why not? Chu Yang turned and looked at Mo Tianji. Why should I save him? Mo Tianji frowned. If I wanted to save him, Gu Duxing could have saved him from the start without any harm. Mo Tianji said angrily, I wanted to use this opportunity to expose Tianbu Hui's scheme and deal with the Shi clan of the upper 3 heavens. I wanted to leave a bad impression on the Shi clan and make it easier for us to do things in the future. Now that the Black Devil isn't dead, the depressed and indignant atmosphere isn't there. Without this atmosphere, the effect will be greatly reduced. Furthermore, it's hard to feel hatred and unfairness. Mo Tianji frowned. Why are you so rash? The Black Devil died a worthy death. He died with a clear conscience. If you let him live, there will be more variables. Chu Yang fixed his eyes on Gu Duxing. He finally understood why Gu Duxing wasn't very enthusiastic at the beginning. This was the reason. Because Mo Tianji had predicted this beforehand, he had arranged for Gu Duxing in advance. However, how could Mo Tianji's position in Gu Duxing's heart be compared to Chu Yang's? Hence, although Mo Tianji had arranged it, Chu Yang's shout made Gu Duxing give up on his original plan. He saved the Black Devil. This was another kind of confrontation. Intelligence and humanity. This was actually a confrontation between Chu Yang and Mo Tianji. Mo Tianji didn't care about the process. He only wanted the results. This was the biggest difference between him and Chu Yang. After a long while, Chu Yang let out a deep breath. He then said in a deep voice, Tianji, I understand your plan. I can also predict what you will do next and what you will say. I also know that your actions will help us achieve twice the results with half the effort in our quest for the upper 3 heavens in the future. At the very least, if we follow your plan, the Shi clan will be in big trouble. And the Shi clan is one of the dominant clans. If I intervene, I will be completely obstructing your plan. It will give us more resistance in the future that we can avoid and make use of. But I can't just watch the Black Devil die. Tianji, I want the Black Devil to die more than you. Chu Yang looked at Mo Tianji sincerely. Mo Tianji calmed down. He sighed deeply and said, I understand. Yes, Mo can't die now. As an enemy, he is a cunning enemy, but he deserves our respect. What? Because he was an assassin hidden in the darkness. If he doesn't launch sneak attacks, is he still the Black Devil? Secondly, as a father, he is a qualified father. As a father, he deserves respect and admiration. However, this is not enough for me to ask Gu Duxing to save him. After all, there are countless blood debts in his hands. Indeed, only death can wash them clean and pay them back. Chu Yang slowly paced back and forth and said, I let Gu Duxing save him because of Wuxia. If the Black Demon dies, what will happen to Mo Laer? What would happen to Dong Wuxiang? If the blissful Black Demon died just like that, this old bastard would feel that he had done a good job. He would be smiling with all his heart. However, he had fought for his daughter's happiness. What kind of happiness was that? It's more like lifelong torture. If Mo is tortured for life, doesn't that mean Wuxiang is tortured for life? This is a matter for Wuxiang's generation. We can't look at it from the perspective of benefits. Chuyang said, sometimes we have to consider humanity and people. Mo Tianji was silent. On one hand, he didn't dare to disagree with Chu Yang's words. On the other hand, he knew that Chu Yang was right. The two of them were silent for a long time. Then Chu Yang said in a low voice, Tianji, if you were the one who encountered this and not Wuxiang, everyone would make the same choice as me. I don't need to say this. You should be able to guess it yourself. Mo Tianji's body shook and he raised his head. I have complete confidence in your wisdom. I have full confidence in your planning. I also value your scheming. Chu Yang paced 2 steps and said, but Lu has one request for you. It's the only request I have for you. That is, when you come up with any plans in the future, start with the premise of, don't hurt your own people. We can't afford to lose any one of them. If all of you die and I'm the only one left, it would be a waste of effort. There's no meaning. A man's achievement needs someone to share it with. It needs someone to acknowledge it and even purely enjoy it. If I succeed, only I will know. Only I will be happy. What's the point? If one day you reach the peak of the heavenly layer but Gudu Xing Dong Wuxiang and I are all small. We are all dead. How does it feel for you, Mo Tianji, to stand at the highest point? Have you thought about it? Chu Yang said seriously. After that, he didn't say anything else. Because Gudu Xing had already rushed over with the black demon in his arms. On the battlefield, the outcome was already decided. Chu Yang hurriedly went forward. Mo Tianji stood quietly in the snow and didn't move. He murmured softly, everything has to be done from the perspective of, don't hurt your own people. We can't afford to lose any one of them. A man's achievement needs someone to share it with. After a long while, Mo Tianji smiled and muttered to himself, I originally thought that I was the one who was right. Now it seems that I'm still right. It's just that I need to adjust my perspective. It should be the premise that I need to rest. Then he shook his head and shook off the snow on his head. He muttered, Chu Yang is cursing me? What does he mean by he Gudu Xing Dong Wuxiang and Xiao Wu are all dead? What kind of bullshit was this? Bah! This bastard doesn't have good intentions. He spat twice and turned around to stride back. How is it? Chu Yang asked. 5 viscera ruptured, serious injuries. Palm strikes on the head, 2 swords on the back, 7 swords on the front. This is bone deep. Gu Duxing's face was a little grim. His left arm and shoulder are gone. One of his ribs is broken. His left thigh is broken. Half of his right leg is chopped off. One of his ears is gone. His cultivation is all gone. As for other minor injuries, there are countless. Chu Yang sucked in a breath of cold air. Quickly carry her into the tent. Chu Yang waved his hand and led the way. Gu Duxing followed behind. Dong Wuxiang carried the unconscious Mo Layer and was about to follow in. However, a figure flashed in front of him and Mo Tianji was already standing in front of him. Dong Wuxiang looked at Mo Tianji in confusion. Mo Tianji looked at him apologetically and suddenly bowed deeply. Wuxiang, I'm sorry. Dong Wuxiang was puzzled. Sorry? Yes, I'm sorry. Mo Tianji straightened up. Gu Duxing could have saved her, but I didn't let him do it. Otherwise, the Black Devil wouldn't have been so injured. This is my fault. Dong Wuxiang was relieved and smiled. You're apologizing to me? He laughed. Is there a need to apologize between you and me? Mo Tianji relaxed and patted Dong Wuxiang's shoulder. The two of them walked in together. Before walking in, Mo Tianji looked at Mo Layer and sighed. In the past, I wouldn't have felt guilty. Mo Tianji thought to himself. Chu Yang had already fed the Black Devil an incomplete version of the heavy pill. His injuries are too serious. Especially his shoulder, where there's such a big hole. I can even see his internal organs. With such serious injuries, the medicine can't heal him at all. Now we can only save his life. As for his recovery, we'll have to wait until he wakes up. Chu Yang's face was very serious as he looked at Dong Wuxiang. Dong Wuxiang nodded. As he spoke, the medicine of the heavy pill flowed. The Black Devil groaned softly and actually opened his eyes. His gaze was still indifferent and cold, but it seemed to have a different charm. It seemed to be longing. He looked around and revealed a disappointed expression. Ah, so I'm still alive. The Black Devil said softly. His voice was filled with disappointment. I thought that I would finally be able to see Layer's mother, sigh. Everyone was speechless. King of Hell Chu, the Black Devil said softly. What's the matter? Chu Yang walked up. In my belt, there's the bone-gnawing heart-burning grass and 7 wonders exquisite demon. He panted, I've already ground them into powder and put them in a secret compartment in my belt. Take it out and give it to Dong Wuxiang and lair. Chu Yang nodded and comforted him. Rest well. You won't die. As for the future, no matter if it's enmity, gratitude, or resentment, we'll talk about it after you recover. It's good enough that I'm still alive. The Black Devil's mouth twitched as if he was smiling. His body relaxed as he lay on the bed and looked at the ceiling of the tent. But I don't want to recover. I've given up, the Black Devil said quietly. No matter if it's enmity, gratitude, or resentment, I've given up. Everyone was stunned. I spent my entire life killing people. Killing people is my life. The Black Devil laughed hoarsely. If there's any karma, I won't be able to redeem it even if I reincarnate 10,000 times. Since I can't redeem it, I might as well not redeem it. If I can live, I think I'll just let it be. Even if I can still breathe, I won't be able to live for more than a few years. The Black Devil smiled faintly and said, let's just live the last few years peacefully. Just live the life of an ordinary person. I've really never lived such a life. Dong Wuxiang, I'll look after the door for you in the future and plant flowers for you. After I'm done with this life, I'll be able to see my daughter Lei Er get married. Dong Wuxiang hugged Mo Lei Er and was so stunned that he couldn't speak. The Black Devil is gone. The Black Devil said, what's my name again? He thought for a long time and said, I remember that I'm called Mo Zhulu. Right double quotation mark? Then I'll be called Mo Zhulu from now on. After saying that, the Black Devil smiled and fell asleep as if he had let go of everything. He didn't ask Dong Wuxiang for anything. When he saw Dong Wuxiang hugging his daughter, he was completely relieved. His daughter had found a home. How she lived was her own business. He was the father-in-law and didn't care about those things. Everyone was silent for a while. Then they quietly retreated. The monarch-level battle in the afternoon. Chu Yang looked at the martial emperors who were cleaning up the battlefield and said lightly, the Shi clan is anxious. Mo Tianji was concerned about something else. He glanced around. Let me say a few words. Although my family is in a rural area, it can be considered the largest family in our area. There are many people. My grandfather has 5 brothers, my father has 8 brothers, and I also have an aunt. My mother's family is also not small. She has 10 brothers and sisters, 7 of my biological uncles and 2 of my aunts. As for those who are close by blood, I don't even know how many. And they're basically all old. I'll never think about what will happen tomorrow. Living in the countryside, such things are trivial and complicated. And there will be many things. But there's one thing, I'll say it but I'll never stop updating. I feel that as an author this is enough. As for my life, I'm writing about it to let everyone understand that if something happens, take note, it's if I don't update in time or stop updating. Everyone should be mentally prepared and forgive me. In fact, it's just a precaution. That's all. As for earning sympathy, I'll say it coldly. In today's society, who the fuck sympathizes with who? That's all I have to say. If anyone curses my clan again, don't blame me for cursing your ancestors. Especially those who came to the original book review section to curse and curse after reading pirated versions. Who do you think you are? Chapter 704. On the Shi clan's ice and snow platform, Shi Qingyu was already restless. The anger on his face was almost uncontrollable. There were more than 30 martial emperors who had just died. They were all from the Shi clan. Moreover, he had died under such an unimaginable betrayal. How could Shi Qingyu not be heartbroken? How could he not be angry? They deserved it. GMO snorted. The Li clan is also anxious, Chu Yang said plainly. The Li clan's forces in the upper 3 heavens had all been wiped out after the battle with the martial emperors. They were only left with one martial monarch. They were like a seedling in a 3,000-mile area. They were extremely pitiful. How could Li Batian not be anxious? His mission here was to bring the Li clan to the upper 3 heavens. Now, it seemed like he was only going to bring a bunch of spirit tablets back? No, at least there was still Li Xiong too, who was half dead. Master Emoji. I don't think this duel is fair. Tianbu Hui shouted. There were not many people around him anymore. There were only 7 martial monarchs and 1 martial saint left. Including himself, there was no difference between him and a general without an army. In the battle just now, the Zhao clan master and the Li clan master were all martial emperors. However, they had all died in this battle. The difference between Tianbu Hui and a general without an army was that there were only 7 of them left. How is it unfair? The white-bearded MOG frowned. The Black Devil's incident was purely a scheme. They arranged it. I think this doesn't conform to the rules of the battle. Tianbu Hui gritted his teeth and shouted. What a joke. Chu Yang snorted and said, how is this unfair? We didn't arrange anything. Even if we did, what can you do about it? If you have the ability to plant a spy in our team, we won't say anything. The problem is, you can't. You can't do it. Since you can't do it, then shut up. The white-bearded MOG nodded. You're right. The battle doesn't allow other people to fight. It doesn't allow people of a higher level to fight. However, there's no rule that says you can't play tricks in the battle. Mo Tianji said, Lord Law Enforcer, you're absolutely right. Furthermore, if you're talking about unfairness, I would like to ask you about it. More than 30 Emperor-level experts have mysteriously appeared in your camp. Did all of them fall from the sky? He sneered and said, even if we have Heimo is still a member of the 3 heavens. Tianbu Hui was speechless. This was what he was most afraid of right now. The white-bearded cultivator looked at him coldly. He didn't say anything and said, the battle between monarchs will take place immediately. Mo Tianji whispered into Chu Yang's ear, there seems to be one more martial monarch-level expert on the other side. Chu Yang nodded heavily. We have 7 monarch-level experts on our side. The other side has 1 more than us. They originally had 8 monarch-level experts. However, the 2 black demons withdrew from the martial monarchs yesterday. There should only be 1 martial monarch left. But now they have 7 martial monarchs. It's obvious that they hid one of them before the battle. 7 against 7. Chu Yang was worried. No matter how one looked at it, the future of this monarch-level battle was uncertain. No one could calculate the real result. They could only rely on their luck. Other than the 2 clan, the Tian clan and the Li clan, there was no one else. However, the additional 4 people should be the reinforcements from the Shi clan of the upper 3 heavens. The most terrifying ones were those 4 people. On my side, I have 1 from the Dong clan, 1 from the Xie clan and 5 from the Ao clan. And the greatest chance of victory on my side is the 5 old ancestors of the Ao clan. Mo Tianji pondered for a while but still couldn't make up his mind. In the end, he gritted his teeth and made a decision. Elder Dong, Elder Xie, when the battle starts, you and the 2 martial monarchs of the Ao clan will hold back the 4 people from the Shi clan of the upper 3 heavens. Then the 3 old ancestors of the Ao clan went all out to deal with the monarchs of the Tian clan, Tu clan and Li clan. This is the only advantage we can use. Xie Zhiqiu and the others solemnly agreed. This was their only chance. Their greatest reliance was the fact that the 3 martial monarchs of the Tian, Tu, and Li clan did not have much contact with each other, much less any tacit understanding. However, the 3 ancestors of the Ao clan had lived together for hundreds of years. This tacit understanding would be the key to victory or defeat in this battle. However, didn't the 4 monarch realm experts of the Shi family have a tacit understanding? Therefore they still had no confidence. Are you confident? Mo Tianji's face darkened. He looked at the serious faces of the martial monarchs and asked. I'm not confident. The oldest martial monarch of the Ao clan shook his head honestly. He was the one with the highest cultivation among them. I can't see through the martial monarch of the other side at all. Therefore his cultivation should be higher than mine. Everyone was a little shocked. If the other side had such a strong person, then it was enough to decide the outcome of this battle. Mo Tianji's expression changed drastically. After a long while, he said word by word with great difficulty, this battle concerns the future generations. We can't lose. If we are not confident. He repeated this sentence twice. Then he shut his mouth and looked at these monarch-level experts. Then he bowed deeply, if there's no hope of victory, then the only hope is to perish together with them. Dragging the other party along with us. If we really want to do this, we have to do it right from the start. He suddenly raised his head and said, fight to the death, fight to the death. Seniors, if you step out of this battle, you will die. However, the key is how you die. You have to die with value. How you die, you have to die with strategy. Mo Tianji smiled bitterly. I didn't want to say this, but I have no choice. If I don't say it, others won't say it either. If we misjudge the situation because of this, the consequences will be serious. None of us can bear it. Therefore I can only say it. Everyone was silent. What Mo Tianji said was the cruelest method. It was also the most effective method at the moment. These words were indeed something that only Mo Tianji could say. No one else could bear to say it so directly, although this was the truth. But when said, it was so cruel and heartless. The martial monarch of the Ao clan laughed and said, "We have lived for so long. It is enough. This battle concerns the future generations. We cannot lose. If we fight, we lose slowly, but we will still die in the end. The other side can live. If we fight with our lives, we might even drag them down with us. Then why not take this price? Naturally, we old men have thought of this." The 7 martial monarchs smiled at the same time. From now on, the big clans will have to rely on the younger generation. Xie Zhiqiu looked at Xie Danxiong. Xie Danxiong's heart ached. Tears flowed down. Everyone's heart was heavy. They didn't know what to say. Just as Mo Tianji said, "This battle, this step, as long as you take it, you will die. The key was how you die, and how you die." That was all. Just as everyone was worried, this battle finally started. The 14 martial monarchs were all old men with white beards. No one would have thought that a battle between 2 martial monarchs would turn out to be this tragic before the start of the battle. Once the battle started, both sides rushed out as if they were flying. 7 against 7. Everyone had their own target. Xie Zhiqiu smiled faintly. He suddenly sped up and met his opponent. His opponent was the martial monarch of the 2 clan. The 2 of them knew each other. This martial monarch of the 2 clan was obviously filled with emotions. Looking at Xie Zhiqiu rushing over, a trace of helplessness flashed in his eyes. He opened his mouth and said, "Old Xie." But before he could finish his words, he saw Xie Zhiqiu approaching like a shooting star. His heart skipped a beat. He pointed his sword forward. But what was even more unexpected was that Xie Zhiqiu didn't dodge his probing sword at all. Xie Zhiqiu's sword blocked slightly and pierced into Xie Zhiqiu's chest. Xie Zhiqiu's body smashed into his chest like a thunderbolt. A thin and long sword pierced into his heart. At the same time, he wildly punched and kicked the chest of this martial monarch of the 2 clan. There was a cracking sound. The 2 of them separated. This martial monarch of the 2 clan only had time to throw 2 punches before he collapsed. Xie Zhiqiu only had time to hurriedly say, "Don't hate me. Let's fight again in the Yellow Spring. I will accompany you." Then he turned around and left. This martial monarch of the 2 clan looked at him in surprise. Finally, he smiled and closed his eyes. He understood Xie Zhiqiu's words. He understood. Because his sword had also pierced into Xie Zhiqiu's heart. Xie Zhiqiu must die. "Old bastard, you are so despicable. I will wait for you in the Yellow Spring." Xie Zhiqiu jumped up with the sword in his chest. His body was bathed in blood. He entered the battle between the martial monarchs of the Li clan and Dong clan like lightning. He didn't dodge or hide. He took 3 swords, 7 kicks, and 1 punch from his opponent. Then he chopped off half of his opponent's shoulder. The martial monarchs of the Dong clan roared at the same time. They chopped this martial monarch of the Li clan in half. Xie Zhiqiu was also chopped in half. Then he left and rushed to another battle ring. "Old friend, don't blame me. We will settle accounts in the Yellow Spring. I will be there." Xie Zhiqiu used a suicidal attack. It was like a thunderbolt flashing. He finished the battle in an instant. He also finished himself. This scene was so fast that people couldn't see it clearly. It was already over. There was only 1 martial monarch left on his side. At the same time, a martial monarch of the Ao clan and a martial monarch of the Shi clan of the upper 3 heavens laughed bitterly and fell down together. They were just like Xie Zhiqiu and the other 2. They had first paid with their lives and then killed each other. However, this martial monarch of the Ao clan wasn't as lucky as Xie Zhiqiu. He didn't have time to use his last life to fight again. However, he finally succeeded in dragging someone with him. The other martial monarch of the Ao clan successfully fought against a martial monarch of the Tian clan. The 2 of them chopped off each other's sword-wielding hands. Then the 2 of them hugged each other. They were martial monarchs. However, they were like hooligans fighting on the streets. They punched and kicked each other. "You beat me to death. I beat you to death." Then the 2 of them stopped moving. The 2 old men with white beards looked at each other with blood on their faces. Their eyes were full of understanding. Chapter 705. The 2 martial monarchs smiled at each other as they fought. They were different from the martial monarchs in the upper 3 heavens who relied on elixirs and resources to reach this stage. They relied on the accumulation of time and their own hard work as well as thousands of killings. Hence, at their age and realm, they were already indifferent to life and death. The only thing they couldn't let go of was their descendants. Their descendants were the reason why they were fighting today. Now that they were going to die together, it was the best ending for them. They could answer to their descendants and they could answer to themselves. Hence, they didn't feel any reluctance or despair. Instead, they felt relaxed and relieved. Finally, it was over. Then they laughed and slashed at each other's throats. Then their bodies twitched at the same time and they stopped moving. The 4 martial monarchs and the remaining 3 martial monarchs from the Sher clan were engaged in a crazy battle. Even if I die, I will kill the enemy. Even if I die one by one, I will drag one down with me. Such a terrifying mentality, such a cruel battle, caused every spectator to tremble in fear. Martial monarchs were supposed to fight in the air like celestials. Even if they died in battle, there would be an extreme sense of beauty. But now it was a completely different matter. The battle started with blood and death. As soon as the battle continued, severed limbs flew all over the sky. The 3 martial monarchs of the Sher clan were in a sorry state. The few of them didn't want to risk their lives. They weren't as open-minded as the Tian clan, Tu clan and Li clan. I'm only here to help. What does it matter to me who wins or loses? Furthermore, I'm not here to help. I have other things to do. With such a mentality, it was easy to imagine how difficult it would be to fight against the 4 martial monarchs who were risking their lives. They could only defend and didn't dare to attack. Because when they attacked, they would give the others a chance to attack. These 4 martial monarchs were even willing to sacrifice their lives to chop off one of their arms. To such an extent. Was this still a battle between humans? The 3 martial monarchs complained in their hearts. Even when they were fighting against the 3 Stars Divine clan and the spiritual beasts, it wasn't as tragic as this. However, they didn't have the chance to retreat or admit defeat in this battle. This was the Lake of Despair. It was a standard place for decisive battles to take place under the supervision of the Dharma Executor and surrounded by the Supreme Martial Artist's divine sense. The only way to end the battle was for one side to be completely wiped out. He would not rest until he was dead. Fortunately, that 4th grade monarch level expert was doing his best to defend. So, he was barely able to maintain the current stalemate. However, it was obvious that this was not a long-term solution. What should we do? One of the monarch-level experts asked anxiously as he blocked the enemy's attacks in a flurry. What else can we do? Kill them. The monarch-level expert who was the leader of the group was very angry. Damn it, if something like this happens in the future, I'll run as far as I can. Damn it, I thought that this time I came to the upper 3 heavens to catch snails with my 5 fingers, or to be a tiger in a group of monkeys. Who would have thought that I would have to pay with my life? This fucking world is too wonderful, but how do we kill them? The monarch-level expert who asked the question was on the verge of tears. You make it sound as easy as farts. How can I not know that I can get out of this predicament by killing them? But the problem was, how could he kill him without paying a price? Kill them however you want to. The monarch-level expert from the Sher clan was distracted for a moment and was almost pierced by 4 swords at the same time. He was so scared that his soul almost left his body. After cursing, he stopped talking and focused on the enemy. However, the remaining 3 monarch-level experts from the Ao clan and the Dong clan's monarch-level experts' attacks were getting more and more intense. The more the other party defended, the more likely it was for them to perish together. Finally, there was a scream. A monarch-level expert from the Sher clan could not help but expand his sword a little. However, the Dong clan's monarch-level expert rushed into the sword light with his sword. Blood splattered everywhere as the Dong clan's monarch-level expert pounced over ferociously. He was already close. The Sher clan's monarch-level expert shouted and stabbed his sword madly. The Dong clan's monarch-level expert smiled calmly. He did not even look and suddenly turned his body. He forcefully stopped the sword that pierced his chest and ruthlessly chopped off the right shoulder of the Sher clan's monarch-level expert. Then he leaped up and endured the attacks of the other 2 experts. He hugged the Sher clan's monarch-level expert tightly and opened his mouth. His white teeth sank deep into the throat of the Sher clan's monarch-level expert. Blood spurted out with a puff. The Sher clan's monarch-level expert's arm and shoulder were broken. He was screaming in pain when he was held tightly by the other party. Then he could not scream anymore and the 2 of them fell down together. There was one less person. That 4th grade monarch knew that he could not drag on any longer. Once he was left alone, the situation would be even worse. He waved his sword and fiercely swung it. The vigorous spiritual chi even made the sky tremble. The sword pierced out with a terrifying explosive force. Even if you want to perish together with me, if you take this sword head-on, you will be completely blown apart by the sword chi. You can't attack me at all. However, the 2 monarch-level experts of the Ao clan did not dodge. They laughed and rushed forward. The sword pierced into the chest of the first monarch. However, in this short moment, the monarch had already thrown out his sword. The sword was like a bolt of lightning. The sword chi exploded in the body of the Ao clan's monarch. At the same time, the monarch of the Ao clan was still rushing forward. The exploded flesh and blood splattered all over the Sher clan's monarch's body and face. The sword had also pierced deeply into his shoulder. Then it came out of his body, opening up a transparent bloody hole in his shoulder. He screamed in pain and retreated hastily. However, the other martial monarch of the Ao clan had already rushed out from the explosion. It was two people who had rushed up just now. He fiercely swung his sword horizontally, wanting to block the martial monarch of the Ao clan. However, just as the two swords were about to come into contact, the sword suddenly retreated, and the person's chest slanted forward. With a "piu" sound, the sword pierced through the Ao clan's monarch-level expert's pumpkin soup, and pierced through his shoulder blade. The martial monarch of the Ao clan sneered and twisted his body. He twisted his body along with the sword in his body. This martial monarch of the Sher clan was still holding the sword in his hand. He wanted to pull it back, but when he twisted his hand was twisted along with the sword. He instantly felt that something was wrong. He quickly exerted strength and slashed horizontally with his sword. In this split second, the sword pierced through the lower abdomen of this fourth-grade martial monarch. Then the sword was swung upwards. From the lower abdomen to the throat, the entire chest and abdomen was cut open. His 5 viscera were cut open and flowed out with a crash. However, with a sweep of his sword, this supreme elder of the Ao clan was also cut into 2 by his sword. The upper half of his body that was sent flying still had a calm smile on his face. He flipped his hand and threw the sword back. It accurately pierced through the back of the martial monarch's head. Then the upper half of the Ao clan's monarch's body fell to the ground. A mocking and relieved smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It is said that the difference of one level between a martial monarch and a martial monarch is like heaven and earth. However, I have successfully killed a 4th-grade martial monarch with the strength of a peak 3rd-grade martial monarch. With this result, I have no regrets in my life. Then his head tilted and he died. The martial monarch of the Sher clan was stabbed in the back of his head. His chest and abdomen were all cut open. However, he still didn't die. He was still screaming in disbelief. He used his hands to stuff the intestines that had already fallen to the ground back into his stomach. He stuffed them in, they flowed out, and he stuffed them in again. After struggling for a while, he seemed to realize that his head was in pain. He reached out and touched the hilt of a sword. He yelled and pulled the sword out. Then, his brain matter spurted out more than 100 feet. Finally, he swayed and turned half a circle before falling down with a plop. He opened his soulless eyes. He wasn't willing to give up. He said in a low voice, "It has been 3 days. How can I die?" Then he didn't make any more sound. The battle between the 14 experts had turned into a one-on-one fight between 2 people in the blink of an eye. The martial monarch of the Ao clan was still smiling faintly. It was as if he didn't care about the deaths of his brothers. He was only attacking the enemy with all his might. But his eyes were already filled with a deathly stillness. The martial monarch of the Sher clan opened his eyes wide. He was scared out of his wits. When he saw his boss die in the most tragic way, he lost all his courage to fight. He screamed and turned to run. "Where are you going?" The ancestor of the Ao clan shouted coldly. His sword turned into a dragon as he chased after him. He stabbed with his sword. The martial monarch of the Sher clan only had time to shout, "Spare!" before he was pierced through from the back to the chest. He lowered his head and saw the bloody sword sticking out of his chest. He smiled bitterly and said, "Can't you spare my life?" Then his eyes went blank. His body slid down from the sword and fell to the ground. He stopped breathing. The martial monarch of the Ao clan looked at the body of his enemy and said indifferently, "I'm afraid not." The battle was over. Chu Yang's side had won. Such a result was out of everyone's expectations, especially the aristocratic clans and those who were watching the battle. After thinking about it, they understood. The people on this side were all prepared to die. They didn't have any hope of surviving. However, the martial monarch of the Sher clan only wanted to save his own life. The mentality of the two sides were completely different. Although the one with the highest cultivation was half a grade higher than the other, such a result wasn't surprising. Both sides were very quiet. There was no sound at all. "We won, right?" The martial monarch of the Ao clan raised his eyebrows and asked the martial monarch of the Ao clan, "Yes. Please announce it as soon as possible," he requested quietly. After hearing the martial monarch of the Ao clan announce their victory, The martial monarch of the Ao clan revealed a comforting smile. He smiled and said, "If you don't announce it, how can I bring this news to them? How can they not know the result of the last battle that they personally participated in?" He laughed and said, "Old guys, we've been together for so many years. We've fought for our lives. How can you all die and I'm the only one left?" Ao Xieyun was shocked. He shouted, "Ancestor, no." The martial monarch of the Ao clan laughed and said, "They're waiting for me. The last battle in this world is 7 against 7. But in the future it can't be 7 against 7. They'll be at a disadvantage. The outcome has been decided. I'm relieved." His eyes flashed past the faces of everyone on his side. He said, "I have to go now. If I'm late, they'll be far away and I won't be able to catch up. Old guys, wait for me. Whoever dares to leave in a hurry, don't blame me for not being courteous. Compared to them, you guys can't bear to leave me." He laughed and turned his sword around. With a pew sound, it pierced into his own heart. He stood upright and muttered, "We come and go together. We die and return together." Chapter 706. It was so tragic. As the last remaining martial monarch from the Ao clan slowly fell, blood and snow splattered everywhere. Everything was like an unreal dream. The entire place was silent. Xia Danxiong, Ao Shiyun, Dong Wule and the rest couldn't help but tear up. "I don't understand. What? We had already won. Why did the elder commit suicide?" Ao Shiyun choked with sobs. Chu Yang's heart ached, but he forced himself to hold it in. He said, "You don't understand? But this is inevitable. When all his brothers died in front of him, when the last enemy died under his sword, if he was still alive, it would be the greatest torture for him. Because all the martial monarchs in the three heavens died in this battle. He was the only one left." Chu Yang said sorrowfully, "This is like the end of an era. They had been entangled with each other for a generation, but now he was the only one left alive. Can you imagine how lonely and miserable that was? Even if there was an enemy from the same generation left in this world, he wouldn't choose to commit suicide. But he really couldn't find a target. At his level, he had already seen through life and death. Before he died, he thought more thoroughly than us. So there's no need to sigh or be sad." Chu Yang said solemnly, "I only wish for them to be able to meet again, be friends again, fight again, and be enemies again. Other than that, I have nothing else to say." Ao Shiyun and the rest were silent. After a moment of silence, Chu Yang and Mo Tianji both bowed deeply towards the mess of flesh and blood on the field. Their expressions were solemn. Then, more than 500 people on this side bowed at the same time. Then, everyone from the Ao clan, Xia clan and Dong clan knelt down. This battle started quickly and it ended even faster. There was almost no time for anyone to react. However, it was tragic and tragic to the extreme. Everyone's heart seemed to have been hit by a hammer. That kind of feeling. Then Mo Tianji silently sent people to clean up the battlefield and escort the dead into the lake of despair. Dong Wule, Dong Wushang, Ao Tianxing, Ao Shiyun, Xia Danxiong and the rest went forward and cleaned up the remains. No matter if it was the enemies or their families. Everything was carried out in silence. The entire battlefield seemed to be a silent and sorrowful pantomime. Tomorrow morning, the battle between saints. When the white-bearded man uttered these words, his voice was somewhat hoarse. Tomorrow would be the battle that would determine the final outcome. Although there were only 2 enemies left. However, if Dukyu were to be defeated, Chu Yang's side would also be in an unimaginable situation. Unless the Calamity Sword spirit intervened or the Demon King was awakened, no one would be able to resist the saint level. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless night. "Brother Yu, what do you think?" Chu Yang stood beside Dukyu with his hands clasped behind his back. "He can't kill me." Dukyu stared at the faintly discernible green figure in front of him and said faintly, "Even I may not be able to kill him. The feeling he gives me is that he should also be a 3rd-stage martial saint. At the same level as me," Dukyu said calmly. Chu Yang was a little shocked. That should be the case. While I was looking at him, he was also looking at me. And now, his feelings should be the same as mine. Dukyu smiled and said, "What we have in common is that I don't want to die, neither does he. But this is a battle of life and death. I'm here to help, so is he. We both have concerns in our hearts, but we both have the confidence to win. Therefore, I only have the confidence to win tomorrow's battle. Presumably, the other party's chances of winning won't be higher or lower than mine. Duke Yu stared at the green figure in front of him through the vast snow and said slowly. Just as he finished speaking, which was also when he made an accurate estimation of the other party's strength, the green figure in front of him quietly disappeared. He left. Duke Yu was sizing him up, but wasn't he sizing up Duke Yu too? Now, the two of them already had an idea of each other. Chu Yang smiled gently and said, "However, I think that the two of you are different." Oh. Duke Yu tilted his head. "Firstly, we won the previous 3 battles. Secondly, the experts brought by this martial saint from the Sher clan are all dead. Even if he returns alive, the Sher clan will hold him responsible for the loss of so many experts this time. After all, it's because of his personal grudges that caused these losses. There's only one person beside him, but behind you there's all of us. This is bullying him with numbers. Even if we don't want to bully him, he's already a little weaker psychologically. This is one of your advantages." Chu Yang said. "You're right." Duke Yu pondered for a while. His people are all dead. It's inevitable that he'll feel grief and anger and even worry about going back. You don't have any of these. This is your second advantage. That's right. Duke Yu's eyes lit up. Besides, he came to the 3 heavens with a mission given to him by his clan. Now he's still worried about his gains and losses and how to complete the mission. You don't have any of these. This is your third advantage. That's right. A smile appeared in Duke Yu's eyes. Of course, the most important point is that although he's from the Sher clan of the upper 3 heavens, don't forget that his soul and spirit have long been bound by the Sher clan. It can be said that he's a slave of the Sher clan, and brother Yu, you're his own master. A soul that's free and independent is definitely different from a soul that's been under the control of others for a long time. This is your fourth advantage. Chu Yang said slowly. That's right. Duke Yu agreed once again. So, brother Yu, you have so many advantages and this is the 3 heavens. It's as if the time, place and people are all on your side. Although your cultivation is similar, the gap between you has already widened. If you can't kill him beautifully tomorrow, I'll look down on you. Don't even think about dying in battle or perishing together with the enemy. Chu Yang said lightly. Duke Yu suddenly laughed heartily, shaking his head as he laughed. He laughed so hard that tears almost came out of his eyes. He seemed incomparably happy. Chu Yang was stunned for a moment. Why did this guy suddenly go crazy? I've always been sure that I'll win against my enemies. Duke Yu said deeply, revealing an arrogant smile. This battle is the same. Not to mention that he's only a 3rd-grade martial saint. Even if he's a 4th-grade martial saint, I'm confident that I can kill him. Although I'm only a 3rd-grade martial saint. But the millions of years of the fairy clan's heritage is gathered in me. What is he? Then why did you? Chu Yang was dumbfounded. It wasn't because Duke Yu said that he wasn't sure, but because Duke Yu finally revealed his origin for the first time. Fairy clan. The only remaining fairy in the Double Heavens continent. So this was Duke Yu's real origin. He couldn't care less about how mysterious he was to this extent. But Chu Yang still didn't know how Duke Yu could have such heaven-defying abilities even if he knew about it. If he were to say that everything was self-taught, that was really unbelievable. Haha. Duke Yu laughed strangely and said with some satisfaction. In this world there's actually someone who truly cares about me and encourages me. Aha, this feeling is really funny. How old am I already? But I've lost this bet with Jun Shizhu. I'm depressed. Duke Yu said that he was depressed. But he laughed out loud. Then his figure flashed and disappeared without a trace. Chu Yang thought for a long time and finally scolded with a smile. So this bastard was testing me. At this time he still has such strange ideas. Shaking his head, he got up and left. The next day the sun rose. The sky was clear and bright. At the peak of the mountain, there were actually thousands of rays of light. Ao Tianxing looked at the rising sun and muttered, "The sun rose again, but the ancestors can't see it anymore." Everyone sighed with emotion. The crowd separated, and Duke Yu walked over leisurely with his long green robe fluttering in the wind. Pay attention to the Supreme Stone Tablet. Mo Tianji said in a low voice, or use the Supreme Stone Tablet. Duke Yu's expression didn't change. His gaze flashed and he walked out as if he didn't hear anything. On the opposite side, the martial saint from the Sher clan had also appeared. Coincidentally, the 2 Earth Sage Realm experts were both dressed in green today just like the day before. Shi Changfeng? Duke Yu placed his hands behind his back and took a step forward. He only took a light step forward, but his entire body seemed to have shrunk to the center of the battlefield. Duke Yu. Shi Changfeng's pupils shrank. He suddenly felt that his opponent today was different from yesterday. But he didn't want to be outdone and he took a step forward. Shi Changfeng, to be able to die in my hands, you're considered a powerful person. Shi Changfeng, you're glorious even though you're dead. Duke Yu laughed elegantly. He sounded as if he was sincerely congratulating Shi Changfeng. To be able to die in my hands, your life isn't in vain. Shi Changfeng's eyes flashed with a sinister look as he said sinisterly. That's why I said you're useless. You even have to learn how to speak from me. Elder Yu mocked, if I call you, you'll call me. Whatever I say, you'll repeat. Shi Changfeng, you're a martial sage. Can't you be a little more creative? Words can't determine the outcome of a battle, Shi Changfeng said sinisterly. But a battle of words is directly related to one's intelligence. If you can't even win a battle of words, why are you still competing with me? Duke Yu's words were as sharp as knives. There's no point in talking so much. Let's fight. Shi Changfeng squinted and his gaze shot out. Evidently he wanted to kill. Duke Yu let out a long howl. Wearing a green robe with long sleeves, he flew up high into the sky like a rocket. Then he chanted loudly, I am the king of the 8 desolations, I am the king of the 10,000 rivers and mountains. He laughed plainly and said, Shi Changfeng, come up and accept your death. Chapter 707. A battle between martial saints was different from a battle between martial emperors and martial monarchs. Even a battle between martial monarchs wouldn't be able to destroy anything here. After all, this was a battlefield where martial saints had fought before. But a battle between martial saints could destroy this place beyond recognition. Hence, Duke Yu rose into the sky before the battle even started. He flew into the sky to challenge his opponents. He limited the battlefield to the sky. Whoever fell down would be the loser. Seeing how domineering Duke Yu was as he flew up into the sky, a trace of admiration appeared in the eyes of the few cultivators. Martial artists had no reservations. If they wanted to kill, they would kill. If they wanted to fight, they would fight. But Duke Yu chose to fight in the sky, which was more difficult. He didn't want to destroy the remains of the martial saints. This was out of respect for the strong. It was also out of respect for his own martial path. Only with respect could one have a future. If a person didn't respect his own goal, then he didn't respect himself at all. If he didn't respect himself, how could he achieve the highest success? Chu Yang was also thinking about these words in his heart. He seemed to have understood something. After this, Chu Yang suddenly discovered a fact that he didn't notice and completely ignored. Ever since he came here, the sword spirit had been silent. He hadn't spoken a single word from the start till now. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. He tried to summon him. The sword spirit seemed to have just woken up from a long sleep. He said in a weak and feeble voice, Lord Sword Master, everything depends on you. After this he became silent again. Chu Yang's heart jerked. A sense of worry surged in his heart. At this point Shi Changfeng shouted and unsheathed his sword. As he waved his sword in the wind, he followed behind Elder Yu like a shooting star and charged into the sky. Everyone lifted their heads at the same time. In the sky the two of them were 7 feet apart. They stood steadily as if they were standing on flat ground. Shi Changfeng was tall. His beard swayed in front of his chest. He held a sword in his right hand and placed his left hand behind his back. His gaze was sharp, and his sword radiance was cold. His green robe swayed in the wind. He looked like an expert. Duke Yu placed his hands behind his back. He was empty-handed. His expression was calm and proud. He looked at Shi Changfeng. His gaze was as calm as an ancient well. Duke Wei, are you going to fight me empty-handed? Shi Changfeng furrowed his brows and asked. He was a little happy in his heart. If you are arrogant and fight empty-handed, then your little one will be finished today. This Duke has never underestimated any enemy. Duke Yu smiled faintly, even if the enemy in front of me is a tortoise, I will not let my guard down. Shi Changfeng was so furious that his eyes almost popped out. He took in a deep breath and gritted his teeth. What are you waiting for? Duke Yu gently smiled and slowly shook his head. Then he elegantly said, Since you can't wait to die, this Duke will fulfill your wish. As he spoke he took out his hands from behind his back. Her fingers were white and empty. However, in the next moment, Duke Yu drew a semicircle with his right hand and grabbed outwards diagonally. Clang. He actually pulled out a long sword from the void. The blade of the sword was like rippling autumn waters. The sword was 3 feet long and emitted a cold light in all directions. As he held the sword horizontally, Duke Yu's gaze was deep as he said, Buddy, I've let you down today. The opponent is only a weak piece of trash, but you have to deal with him personally. I'm very sorry. Shi Changfeng was so furious that his stomach was about to explode. His long sword flashed and he charged over. Duke Yu laughed and flew up diagonally. Following this, he bent his body in midair and his head was below his feet. His sword radiance was like a dome as it came crashing down. Shi Changfeng shouted, "Good timing." He raised his long sword to meet him. When one reached the martial sage level, it was no longer important whether one was holding a divine weapon or not. Everything was turned into a sharp sword by one's cultivation. Like a bolt of lightning, the two swords met in midair. Boom. As the two thin swords came into contact, the sound that was produced was like two mountains colliding in midair. It was as loud as a huge bell. The entire heaven and earth seemed to darken. Powerful auras shot in all directions. The accumulated snow on the ground flew into the air and covered the entire sky. Under this one strike, the clear sky turned into a snowy sky. As the snowflakes flew in the sky, the two figures approached each other at lightning speed. One of their swords was like a bolt of lightning while the other was like a thunderbolt. The two streaks of sword radiance intersected in midair to form the shape of a cross. It was still flashing and dazzling, but the two of them had already soared into the sky. After this, they continued to fight for a few thousand feet. Streaks of sword light and sword flowers kept appearing in the air. However, the moment they appeared, the two people who were fighting were definitely no longer there. The snow on the ground kept on jumping up and down. It was so thick that one couldn't even see their own fingers. This was even more intense than an avalanche caused by a landslide. Boom. A loud sound was heard. Their left hands clashed in midair. The two of them groaned at the same time and were sent flying backwards. Instantly, a ferocious force scattered in all directions. The lake of death, which was as smooth as a mirror, was stirred up by this strong wind. Suddenly, monstrous waves surged up into the sky with a loud splash. It was as if a huge dragon had burst out of the lake of death and broke through the sky. It carried an unparalleled aura as it created rain in midair. In the sky, Duke Yu let out a long howl. His two legs took a step forward and he actually ran quickly through the void. In just a few steps, he arrived above the lake of death. He waved his hands and a strange green mist suddenly filled the sky. The flowing water seemed to be able to understand human language. It gathered towards Elder Yu's palms on its own. In the next moment, the flowing water condensed in midair and turned into a huge sword that was 100 feet wide, 50 feet wide and 50 feet long. The tip of the sword shone with a cold radiance. It was as if it wanted to slice open the heavens and the earth. Duke Yu bellowed, "Go!" As he shook his arms, this huge long sword howled as it charged toward Shi Changfeng. This wasn't a slash, or a stab. It was a direct attack. Shi Changfeng's beard flew into the air as he shouted coldly. Suddenly he flew backwards. As he retreated, his right hand that was holding onto his sword started to swing crazily. Sword chi surged in the sky. Bright sword chi intersected with one another and appeared in the sky. After this, the sword aura didn't disappear. All the sword aura formed a huge sword. After this, Shi Changfeng stopped retreating. The sword seemed to be extremely heavy as he pushed it forward very slowly. He exhaled and shouted, "Destroy!" The huge sword formed from sword radiance let out a sword hum and flew out. It flew faster and faster. It fiercely collided with Duke Yu's huge sword made of waves in the air. It was as if two planets had collided. Oh no! The white-bearded cultivator quickly opened his hands. His vigorous vital energy engulfed the icy platform that he was on. The many powerful cultivators from the aristocratic families also tried to protect themselves. Following this huge storm came crashing down. Suddenly, rocks flew everywhere and waves crashed against the shore. Thousands of snowflakes were swept up. The snowflakes rose into the air and formed the shape of a mushroom cloud. Chuyang and the rest were watching the battle. When they saw this situation, Chuyang had an idea. He shouted, "Everyone circulate your powers. Hold hands and resist." Everyone followed his instructions. Just as they held hands, the storm came crashing down on them. With a boom, everyone was swept up and flung 400 feet away. Everyone was drenched in sweat in an instant. Tianbu Hui was in an even worse state. He screamed and flew up. He became a small black dot in the distance. With a plop, he fell into the lake of death. Everyone crawled up pathetically. However, they were in a daze. They couldn't even see their own fingers. They could only hear whoosh whoosh whoosh, boom boom boom, boom boom boom. Evidently, the two of them were still fighting in midair. After a long while, the snow started to fall. Their vision became clearer. Everyone immediately raised their heads to look at it. They saw that dozens of Elder Yu and Shi Changfeng had appeared in mid-air. Each of them wielded a sword and were fighting one-on-one. Chuyang focused and looked up. He was relieved. No matter how Elder Yu's movements changed, he was still standing above the lake of death. Shi Changfeng could only face Elder Yu's attacks. He was facing the lake of death. One was facing the other while the other was facing the other. This was very clever. Duke Yu laughed and said indifferently, "The experts of the Shi family of the upper three heavens are indeed extraordinary." Shi Changfeng snorted and said, "Elder Yu from the dark bamboo is also not to be underestimated." Duke Yu chuckled. His laughter was very gentle and carefree. It was like a gentle breeze blowing through the bamboo forest. Although it made a rustling sound, it made people feel peaceful and relaxed. Following this, Elder Yu said softly, "However, how can the Shi clan compare to me?" His silhouette flashed and he suddenly traversed through the air, flying all the way. He actually kept all the afterimages he had created, and he was the only one left in the air. Then a faint flush appeared on his fair face as he shouted, "The real attack is coming." He clapped his palms together and a crisp sound could be heard. It was as if he had suddenly crushed space and 7 black holes appeared in the air at the same time. Following this, the water of the lake of death rose from all directions. There were 7 streams of lake water. They carried warm air with them as they flew 800 feet into the sky. They turned into 7 huge swords. They attacked at the same time. A scream could be heard in mid-air. Chuyang focused and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He saw that the tip of one of the 7 swords was actually a person. Tianbu Hui. He had just fallen into the middle of the lake of death. Just as he was about to swim up, Elder Yu seemed to have treated him as water and swept him up. He was used as a weapon. At this moment, Tiangong's hands were tightly pressed against his waist. His legs were tightly pressed together and his neck was stubbornly stiff. His entire body was like an arrow released from a bow. With a momentum that could chase the wind and break the clouds, with a speed faster than lightning, he brought along a giant sword formed by endless streams of water. He was attacking Shi Changfeng, Tianbu Hui's adoptive father. Chuyang guessed that Elder Tianbu Hui had never unleashed such speed in his entire life. Fuck. He's flying through the air. Tianbu Hui is truly amazing. GMO exclaimed. Chapter 708. The outcome of this battle was clear. There was no way to not be clear. One side was already dead. How could they not accept it? Just as Duke Yu had said, not a single one of them came out. We won. Mo Tianji looked at the white-haired enforcer who was already standing on the ground. That's right. The enforcer's expression was a little complicated. As an enforcer, he had fought countless battles in his life. Furthermore, all of them happened in the upper three heavens. It could be said that every battle was much more intense than this one. The people who participated in the battles were also much more powerful than the people who were fighting in this battle. However, this battle in the upper three heavens was filled with an indescribable feeling. The battle is over. We have won. Mo Tianji smiled and said, "However, I still want to ask the enforcer something. Regarding the sudden appearance of monarch-level experts, emperor-level experts, and saint-level experts, does anyone have any questions? What is the reason for these experts who should not have appeared in the upper three heavens to appear out of nowhere?" He laughed and said, "Of course they are already dead. There is no point in saying more. However, if this goes on for a long time, and the heavens can interfere as they wish, the lower three heavens and the upper three heavens will become a mess. I am very suspicious about the purpose of the enforcer's existence." Mo Tianji stood proudly and said indifferently, "Lord Enforcer." Haha. The white-haired enforcer's face turned red. He glared fiercely at Shi Qingyu. "If not for your Shi clan, why would we be insulted and not be able to say anything? I will settle this matter with your clan when we return." Shi Qingyu's face turned red. His eyes flashed with anger as he said, "Nonsense. Those people just now were indeed from the Shi clan. However, they were all acting out of personal grievances. They had no choice but to act. Furthermore, they are already dead. What's so honorable about slandering a dead man like this?" "I did not say that I was honorable." Mo Tianji said indifferently, "However, no matter whether it is personal grievances or national grievances, the laws of the heavens are the laws of the heavens. In the laws of the heavens, it doesn't say that you can interfere with private grudges. However, the laws of the heavens didn't say that we can't interfere with private grudges." Shi Qingyu sneered. Mo Tianji still said indifferently, "Regarding the heavenly laws, you should discuss it with the enforcers, not me, Mo Tianji." I'm very sorry. I'm not familiar with the laws of the firmament. Shi Qingyu was stunned. Only then did he realize that there was something wrong with the way the three law enforcement officers looked at him. His face immediately paled and his body began to tremble. Suddenly it was too late for regrets. He knew that he had fallen into Mo Tianji's trap. Everything that Mo Tianji had done was just to lead him to say this sentence. The laws of the heavens did not say that private grudges could not be interfered in. He only needed to say these words out loud. It was destined that the yellow mud would fall into the crotch of his pants. Layered heaven laws. Since when was it your Shi family's turn to explain? Then what was the use of the enforcers? As the Duke of the Shi family, if he said this in front of everyone, wouldn't he be telling everyone that the Shi family was indeed making use of the enforcers this time? If Shi Qingyu did not say this, then when the enforcers went back to ask, the Shi family could say that they did not know. What? They actually went down? I'll investigate immediately. Therefore, after investigating and dealing with a few people who were neither too big nor too small, this matter was reduced to a small one. However, from the moment Shi Qingyu said this sentence, the Shi family could no longer escape from the responsibility. How could Shi Qingyu not panic? The three law enforcement officers didn't say anything. They just gave him a deep, meaningful look. Then they turned their heads. Shi Qingyu looked around in panic. He only saw Li Batian, Yi Shiyu, Meng Se and the rest looking at him with gloating eyes. His face instantly turned ashen. The gazes of the other 8 great clans and the enforcers were all focused on a few people. Their gazes were fervent. Gudu Xingdong Wushang and Mo Tianji. These 3 people were the most dazzling young people. A sword emperor and a saber emperor. The master of calculation and manipulation. As for Dukyu, they all knew that such a person could no longer be recruited. As for the others, they did not put them in their eyes. Chu Yang's performance was also very dazzling. However, compared to these 3 people, he paled in comparison. This was the situation that Mo Tianji had purposely created for this battle. The 3 people stood out and suppressed the halo above Chu Yang's head. People would notice him but they would not pay special attention to him. This way the threat that others posed to Chu Yang would be reduced. After all, it was still acceptable for a few geniuses to appear in such a big 3 heavens. For a day and a night, no one said anything. No one did anything. Everything was to recover their strength. This included the great clans and the enforcers. The supreme martial artist suppression just now was not easy to bear. They had to circulate their martial arts to slowly recover. Furthermore, it was impossible for them to fully recover after a day and a night. Furthermore, they had just gone through a big battle and were feeling depressed. They could not possibly continue to talk about important matters. That night, Mo Tianji stepped on the 7 stars illusion. With the sun and moon lantern above his head and the yin and yang swords in his hands, he began to calculate the secrets of the heavens with all his might. This was the procedure that he had planned step by step before the battle. Right now, although the situation had changed a lot, it was still progressing according to his plan in an orderly manner. The moment the moon shone in the sky, Missouri Tianji violently spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. Chu Yang hurriedly supported him and fed him a heavy pill. Only then did Mo Tianji wake up. His expression was extremely weak. I have realized that you are basically using your own life to predict the secrets of the heavens. Chu Yang grumbled, if this goes on, what will happen? Mo Tianji chuckled. Predicting the secrets of the heavens requires a person's life as compensation. If I don't pay a little, how can I get anything? His eyes were filled with joy as he said, but this is also the greatest value of my existence. It is also my greatest joy. Every time I know something that others do not know, that sense of accomplishment surpasses everything else. Chu Yang sighed deeply, not knowing what to say. Are Dong Wushang and Rui Butong outside? Mo Tianji asked. Invite the 2 of them in. I want to say a few words to them. Wushang, do you like Mo Layer? No one expected this. After Dong Wushang came in, Mo Tianji actually asked such a question. Dong Wushang was a little stunned and also a little confused. He scratched his head and said, This? I really don't know. I only know that I don't dislike being with her. Dong Wushang was tall and burly. Scratching his head like this made him look especially cute. Chu Yang couldn't help but laugh. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and said, Then Wushang, when you saw Mo Layer vomiting blood and fainting, did your heart hurt? Yes. Dong Wushang was very straightforward this time. There was a sudden pain. Then I felt my heart clench. But this doesn't seem to have anything to do with whether I like her or not. Hearing this sentence, Even the wise and far-sighted Mo Tianji rolled his eyes. Alright, you see, Mo Layer's father, the Black Devil, is already seriously injured and disabled. The Black Devil clan basically died out after that battle. As for us, even if the Black Devil clan is on our side now, we won't allow such a clan of assassins to flourish again. So, it doesn't seem appropriate for Mo Layer to stay here now. Mo Tianji chose his words carefully and said, if Mo Layer goes with you to relax. Firstly, you can get rid of the mental block in your heart. Secondly, you can fulfill the Black Demon's wish. Thirdly, you can even do something for your brothers and be of great help. Are you willing? Dong Wuxiang only heard the last sentence. You can do something for your brothers and help them greatly? Thus, he readily agreed. What's there to be unwilling about? Then very good. Prepare yourself. Prepare to live together with Mo Layer. Mo Tianji smiled strangely and said, don't worry, we will take good care of the Black Devil. As long as I, Mo Tianji, am here, the Black Devil will be fine. Even if he really dies, I, Mo Tianji, will die before him. You will also die before him. The fact that Mo Tianji had spoken to this point showed how serious he was. There was no doubt about it. I believe you. Dong Wuxiang said without hesitation. Okay, next you, and so on, 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 and so on. Mo Tianji lowered his voice. Ah. Dong Wuxiang shouted. His eyes almost popped out. What are you shouting for? I will send someone to help you. Mo Tianji looked at him angrily. Butong, do you want to go to the upper three heavens? Mo Tianji smiled and asked Rui Butong kindly. Whoever doesn't want to go is a bastard. Rui Butong was even more straightforward. That's great, there's a chance now. Mo Tianji raised his eyebrows. In the dead of night, Chu Yang and Mo Tianji slowly strolled by the side of the lake of death. After this chaos in the upper three heavens, I'm afraid that the upper three heavens will also be in chaos. Mo Tianji said, after this chaos, I'm afraid that part of the passage between the upper three heavens and the upper three heavens will be blocked by the enforcers. The other part will also be heavily guarded. There won't be people from the upper three heavens sneaking down to stir up trouble. At least for a short period of time, it won't be possible. So you arranged for Dong Wuxiang and Rui Butong to go to the upper three heavens first? Chu Yang asked seriously. That's right. Mo Tianji looked at the sky with his hands behind his back and said softly, your fate is still in chaos. I can't calculate it. But whether or not I can calculate it, I'll make plans in advance. After all, it's better to be prepared. You also know that I have a habit of preparing for a rainy day. Mo Tianji smiled faintly. The upper three heavens is too unfamiliar to us. I won't recklessly charge in with you. Dong Wuxiang is brave and resourceful. Rui Butong is cunning and flexible. With the two of them going, we can explore the bottom of the sea and fight steadily. No matter how many years it takes before we can go up, we must first bury 2 nails. Chapter 709. Mo Tianji narrowed his eyes and said, Boss, I won't say anything now, but after many years, you'll understand that if you plant a tree today when it's about to die from the sun, there will be a forest waiting for you. Chu Yang smiled faintly. I can think of a forest, but it's not a good idea for you to always overdraft yourself like this. If he fights the heavens, your body won't be able to take it and you'll be a burden to us. Mo Tianji smiled warmly. Absolutely not. Everyone knows that grasping the world was created by Xiao Fengyun himself. But after studying it for a while, I realized that it's limitless. He blinked and said, since we can use our lifespan to exchange for the prediction of heaven's secrets, then we can use luck and other methods to make up for our losses. I reckon that Senior Xiao Fengyun was so powerful back then because he obtained this controlling the world. Chu Yang suddenly remembered. Xiao Fengyun was a wise man of his generation. He started when he was 20 years old. He changed his mind and rushed to revered martial artist in the lower 3 heavens. After entering the lower 3 heavens, he created his own technique and rushed all the way to the lower 3 heavens. Any trash cultivation method in his hands could be turned into something magical. His highest achievement was that of a peak-grade martial monarch. But he reached this level with his own hard work and it only took him 10 years. Although his surname was Xiao, he wasn't from the Xiao clan of the lower 3 heavens. Moreover, the most unbelievable thing was that with the strength of a grade martial monarch, he fought for a territory in the lower 3 heavens with his bare hands. Even the big ruling families acknowledged it. Before that, Chu Yang always thought that martial monarchs were unattainable. So he didn't feel anything wrong. But as his knowledge increased, Chuyang gradually realized that martial monarchs weren't that amazing in the lower three heavens. But how could Xiao Fengyun run rampant in the lower three heavens with the cultivation of a great martial monarch? Now that he thought about it, it was an unsolvable mystery. Mo Tianji looked at Chuyang's expression and couldn't help but smile. Xiao Fengyun relied on the word wisdom in his life. Before he gained a firm foothold in the upper three heavens, he never fought with anyone directly. Those who took the initiative to attack him would find themselves fighting with the other great clans of the upper three heavens for no reason at all. He has always been on the right and the left, but he doesn't rely on anyone. What he has learned in his life is as vast as the ocean. Therefore, in the end, he created a situation where all the great clans needed his help. Thus, a delicate balance was formed. None of them dared to touch him. But once he dies, the forces he created will be immediately divided up. Mo Tianji sighed deeply and said, but precisely because he learned too many things and too many things, even though he had a treasure like controlling the world, he stopped at the level of a low-grade martial lord because of too many things. What an amazing person! Chuyang exclaimed in admiration. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he said, in that case, wouldn't you be like Xiao Fengyun and be able to deduce many things about any martial arts? Mo Tianji smiled bitterly and shook his head. I'm different from Xiao Fengyun. I'm not interested in music, chess, painting, poetry, wine and tea. In fact, because of tea, I even wasted my own Tianji tea. What I'm most interested in are intelligence, heavenly secrets, fate, yin and yang, and heaven and earth. Although there are many things, when all of them are added together, they are actually one thing. It's called creation. Mo Tianji said indifferently, therefore this is my current main focus. As for martial arts, I originally wasn't very interested in them. However, after this battle I will cultivate them. This is because only when my cultivation is high in my martial arts can my ability to see through heavenly secrets improve. Xiao Fengyun only realized that he had neglected the fundamentals and focused on trifles 10 years after he obtained the world-grasping treasure. He immediately regretted it. However, at that time, it was already impossible for him to have any great achievements in any of the areas. Mo Tianji sighed. When I saw what Xiao Fengyun left behind, I also sighed. I have this fate, but I don't have this fortune. This is also the reason why I resolutely gave up on other miscellaneous things. Chuyang said, but you clearly know that martial arts are the pillars. Why? Because I didn't have time. Mo Tianji's eyes were bitter. I was constantly struggling to survive under Mo Tianyun's pressure. Under those circumstances, I could only learn this to save my life. However, right after Mo Tianyun died, you came. I had no choice but to rack my brains for you and for us to survive. He chuckled. However, the current 3 days are basically peaceful and uneventful. Therefore, I have enough time to control the Mo clan and cultivate at the same time. Therefore, you don't have to worry about me. Perhaps I will reach the other side of martial arts earlier than all of you. That's good. Chuyang relaxed. Chuyang did not ask what the world-grasping treasure was. However, he believed in Mo Tianji. Whether he asked or not, it was the same. Just like the Calamity Sword. Even if Mo Tianji was 10,000 times smarter, he would not be able to use it. Even Chuyang might not be able to control the world. However, it was suitable. Most importantly, in Mo Tianji's hands, it was the same as in Chuyang's hands. One heart, one life, one goal. Furthermore, only a naturally intelligent person like Mo Tianji could unleash the greatest power of the world-grasping treasure. That night, Mo Tianji looked for GMO, Gu Du Xing and the rest for a secret talk. Before dawn he had a secret talk with Dukyu. Finally he gave some instructions to Mo Laer. Mo Laer was initially reluctant and wanted to stay behind to take care of her father. However, in the end Mo Tianji said something and she actually relaxed and listened to him obediently. This made Chuyang very puzzled. How much sacrifice did the Black Devil make for his daughter? For her father, Mo Laer was so anxious that she vomited blood on the spot. That was blood and chi attacking the heart. What she vomited was heart blood. She almost died following the Black Devil. It was easy to imagine how close the relationship between this father and daughter was. Mo Laer would not leave her father no matter what. She was also worried. But what did Mo Tianji say to make this one-track-minded young Black Devil feel relieved and follow Dong Wuxiang? Chuyang asked himself. He probably did not have such means. When he asked Mo Tianji smiled and said, Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed. This made Chuyang spit on his face. The next day, after Chuyang and the others woke up, they tidied up. The big clans also got up and walked over. The battle here was over. It was time for them to go back. Of course, other than the Li clan, no one else achieved their goal. Who was the Tribulation Sword Master? There were only two possibilities. One was Gu Duxing and the other was Dong Wuxiang. However, Dong Wuxiang was the Saber Emperor. How could the Tribulation Sword Master be the Saber Emperor? Therefore he was ruled out. As for Gu Duxing, he was the Sword Emperor. Everyone knew that although the Sword Emperor appeared because of the Tribulation Sword Master, the Tribulation Sword Master was definitely not a simple Sword Emperor. The Sword Emperor needed to be undistracted and focused on cultivation. Only then could he succeed. However, the Master of the Calamity Sword had always been an all-knowing person. His thoughts were complicated, and he was even more cunning than the #1 sage of the Zhuge family who was famous in the heavens. How could such a person be the Sword Emperor? Therefore Gu Duxing was also ruled out. As for the others, they were even less likely. There were people who suspected King of Helchu, but King of Helchu was really too unremarkable in this battle. Furthermore, from the looks of it, he didn't seem to be the leader of this group of people. He fought while he was still a sovereign. How could the Tribulation Sword Master be like this? Which one of them was willing to be under someone else? Furthermore, as long as the Tribulation Sword Master fought, no matter how he changed his moves, the big clans would be able to recognize him at first glance. Chu Yang's sword technique was extremely sharp and could be called a sword technique. However, compared to the Tribulation Sword technique, it wasn't at that level. Furthermore, Chu Yang was very familiar with it. It was obvious that he used it often. That was even more impossible. Therefore they started to suspect Mo Tianji. However, Mo Tianji, what was there to suspect? Mo Tianji was a strategist. Therefore the big clans, including those who held the sword technique, were all stunned. There were already a few people who locked their gazes on Li Xiong too, who was being led by Li Batian. This guy was probably one of the tribulations of the Tribulation Sword Master. This matter was a little complicated. Chu Yang and the others were suspicious at first, but Chu Yang and Mo Tianji had a secret discussion that day which made the first impression the strongest. However, they completely eliminated the suspicions of the people on their side. Now all the big clans were suspicious of Li Xiong Tuesday. Of course they ignored Li Xiong Tu's enemies. How could the brothers of the Tribulation Sword Master kill each other? Wasn't that a joke? After Li Xiong Tu fainted that day, Li Batian didn't let him wake up after seeing that the Li clan was dead. If this guy didn't take things easy after he woke up, Li Batianji wouldn't be able to control himself here. Furthermore, he came down this time to help his entire clan. Now he was only left with a single strand of hair. He couldn't explain himself when he returned. If something happened to Li Xiong Tu, he would be in deep trouble. You're Gu Duxing? The clan leader of the Gu clan in 3 days? The white-bearded cultivator looked at Gu Duxing with an amiable expression. If the cultivator didn't speak, the others wouldn't dare to make the first move. Gu Duxing was already prepared. He replied respectfully. Are you interested in following me back to 3 days? The white-bearded cultivator said kindly, with your talent, it's a waste for you to stay here for 3 days. If you follow me back and become the disciple of a great master, you'll be able to master your swordsmanship very soon. Gu Duxing's face flushed red. He seemed very agitated. However, his face turned pale immediately. He seemed to have thought of something. However, anyone could tell that he was hesitating. He was conflicted. He seemed to be struggling internally. After a long while, he said with much difficulty, I really want to go, but I have no choice. I can't go for now. He seemed to have made a difficult decision. However, he still said, however, if I can settle the matter here, I'll definitely go to 3 days. When that time comes, I'll have to ask the cultivator to take care of me. The white-bearded cultivator calmed down. He thought that since Gu Duxing said that, it would be easy to handle. He could tell that Gu Duxing was leaving him a way out. He thought, who knows when I'll go and find you. But now, I have no choice. I understand. After all, a martial artist's dream is to go to 3 days. The white-bearded cultivator nodded his head generously and became even more amiable. He took out a purple crystal token from his bosom and said, Duxing, if you arrive in the 3rd heavens, you can take this token and come find me. No matter what it is, this old man can handle it properly for you. Chapter 7:10. As he spoke, the white-bearded cultivator swept his indifferent gaze across the faces of the big clans. His gaze was not sharp. However, the warning was obvious. This person, this sword emperor, the future sword monarch, sword saint, even, I've already decided. Who dares to snatch him from me? When they met his gaze, the big dukes were all expressionless. Ling Han Shui said lightly, Elder Mu, since you've already decided, we naturally won't be tactful. It's not early for everyone to come out, it's better to get down to business. Everyone nodded, obviously agreeing with Ling Han Shui's words. We're not stupid. How can we snatch the person you've decided on? At most, we'll snatch him after we return or after he's out of your sight. If that doesn't work, won't we destroy him secretly? The white-bearded cultivator snorted and stuffed the jade pendant into Gu Duxing's hand. He said to Dong Wuxiang, You're Dong Wuxiang? Dong Wuxiang said straightforwardly, Yes. I'm going to the upper three heavens to take a look. The white-bearded cultivator and the big clans were all stunned. This guy is really straightforward. We haven't had the chance to ask him. If it were anyone else, wouldn't they take this opportunity to fight for benefits? Seeing that the cultivator thinks so highly of you, he'll definitely give you whatever you want. I've never seen such a stupid person. This guy just blurted it out so straightforwardly. At the side, Dong Wuxiang's eyes suddenly became hot, and a wave of guilt suddenly hit him. Wuxiang did it for me, right? He lowered his head and sighed softly in his heart. He only felt sad. I forced my own brother to leave and go to the upper three heavens. Good. Good. The white-bearded cultivator couldn't help but say good 3 times. He said, Since that's the case, I'll bring you up with me. But I have a request, Jiang Wuxiang said in a daze. Everyone almost fainted. What the fuck? So this guy isn't stupid, he's waiting here. Now that he's whetted his appetite, he can get whatever he wants. What request? Elder Mu's face also twitched. I'm going up to take a look. I want to explore the upper three heavens. However, I don't necessarily have to join any organization. Dong Wuxiang said straightforwardly, I'm a straightforward person. Of course, if you want to join, you can't do it now. No matter what, you need to have some foundation and some achievements. Everyone understood in their hearts. This guy looks silly, but he is not stupid at all. Right now, even if it was the Saber Emperor, he would only be an unremarkable little minion. Once he had some strength, his value would multiply. The white-bearded man laughed heartily and said, Of course, that's not a problem. Even if we are the law enforcers, we can't force people to do things they don't want to. He made up his mind. Once I go there, I'll take out my sincerity to recruit you. I'll let you take a low-grade Saber Saint as your master. Let's see if you're willing to part with Zhao. What he didn't know was that even if he invited a Saber Supreme to be Dong Wuxiang's master, Dong Wuxiang would probably scoff at him. I have another request. Dong Wuxiang said. You have another request? The white-bearded man was stunned. Yes. Dong Wuxiang said righteously, If I go to the upper three heavens, my wife has to go too, right? Behind him, Layer's face was red. She hid her face behind Dong Wuxiang's back and secretly pinched his waist. What? When did I become your wife? You make it sound so vulgar and unpleasant. Dong Wuxiang stood firm and unmoving. The muscles on his black face contorted violently without leaving a trace. Oh, that's only right. The white-bearded man, Elder Mu, was instantly relieved. Isn't it just bringing your wife? Besides, if I don't let you bring your wife, what are you going to do? My brother also wants to go and take a look. Dong Wuxiang pulled Rui Badong over. He wants to go and find some medicine. I'm sick. Rui Badong had come out in high spirits, but when he heard the last sentence, he immediately lowered his head deeply, almost stuffing it into his pants. This is so embarrassing. What reason can't you say? Must you say this? In front of all the brothers and big clans? What's the difference between that and announcing it to the upper three heavens? Seeing everyone's strange looks, Rui Badong was in so much pain that he wanted to die. I can foresee that the name Rui Badong will soon be famous all over the upper three heavens. How am I going to find a wife in the future? Just as he raised his head, he met Yi Shiyu's somewhat passionate eyes. Instantly, his whole body trembled and he started to shiver like a quail in winter. That gaze is too scary. Suddenly, Rui Badong was a little afraid of going to the upper three heavens. He secretly swore in his heart, Once I reach the upper three heavens, I will immediately disappear without a trace. I will definitely not let any of you find me. Rui Badong gritted his teeth and thought fiercely. The white-bearded man agreed and thought, I thought it was a big deal. Isn't it just impotence? Yes, if it's serious, it will be very difficult to find such medicine even in the upper three heavens. Dong Wuxiang's matter was settled just like that. Next, it was time for the confrontation. He asked Imo Tianji, but Imo Tianji didn't answer and only revealed a warm smile. His smile was amiable and impeccable, just like the smile in the textbook of nobility. However, the meaning of, "I'm not going" in his smile was also so obvious. So obvious that it made people feel embarrassed to ask again. Luo Kadi shook his head like a rattledrum. GMO grabbed Huyan Albua's hand with a face full of happiness. Xie Danxiong, the young clan head of the Xie clan, how could he leave? Ao Shiyun. Needless to say. As for Tan Tan, the white-bearded man only took a glance and turned his face away. This face was indeed a little too horrible to look at. Especially when the law enforcer looked over, Tan Tan unexpectedly revealed a smile. There was no way to describe this smile. The white-bearded man felt very lucky. Luckily, I haven't eaten this morning. Damn it. Next was the problem of dealing with the funeral. Actually, there wasn't much to do. It was just a memorial service and everyone should go their separate ways. After the man left, the big clans expressed their condolences and tactfully mentioned it to Gu Duxing and the rest. However, seeing that everyone's attitude was firm, they had no choice but to accept this fact. However, when they were about to leave, these young talents gathered together and looked at each other with a kind of, "One day, we'll meet again in the upper three heavens." Although they were all smiling and amiable, the faint wariness between them was extremely tight. Everyone had a feeling, these people will be my opponents in the future. It's very dangerous. Not only did Chu Yang and the rest have this feeling, but Li Batian and the rest also felt it very clearly. After a few hypocritical and tacit words, the big clans left one by one under the supervision of the man in charge. Finally, Dong Wushang, Rui Butong and Mo Lei Air bid farewell to everyone and left with the man in charge. The Black Devil and his brothers came out to send them off. Although the Black Devil was severely injured, he struggled and insisted on coming out. The Black Devil felt very gratified that his daughter was going to the upper three heavens. He said happily, "Dong Wushang, I'll leave my daughter to you. You have to protect her well. Take care of her. If you dare to let her be wronged." Dong Wushang patted his chest and said heroically, "Don't worry. Leave everything to me." The Black Devil nodded. Then he turned his head to look at Dong Wu Lei and said, "The two of them have gone up together for many years. A man and a woman alone together. Why don't we take advantage of the fact that both of us are here? I'm Lei Air's father and you're Dong Wushang's elder brother. As the saying goes, an elder brother is like a father. Let's settle the marriage here. It'll be more justifiable." When he said this, Mo Lei Air's face burned with anger. Dong Wu Lei said, "That's good. Let's exchange tokens. This is an emergency so we can only do this." "What tokens?" The Black Devil waved his remaining hand disdainfully and said, "We're people of the pugilistic world. Our words hold the weight. You said it, I said it, and everyone is a witness. Then, from now on, the two of you are husband and wife." It's so troublesome and annoying. The man is in charge of the outside and the woman is in charge of the inside. Exchanging tokens is nothing more than moving from one's left pocket to the right pocket. Don't you know how annoying it is? He raised his eyebrows. "Dong Wushang, from now on, my daughter is your wife." He turned around and shouted, "Lei Air, this is your husband. How the two of you fight and scold each other is your business. No one else can interfere and they can't do anything about it. Including me. From now on, your happiness is your business. If you're unhappy, it's your own fault. That's it. Does anyone have anything else to say?" When he turned around, he saw that everyone was stunned in place. This was the first time they saw a father-in-law like this. There was no betrothal gift, no matchmaker, no dowry, no confirmation ceremony, no wedding ceremony, and no ceremony. They were husband and wife just like that. They had heard of a final decision, but they had never heard of such a final decision. Even the bride-to-be Mo Lei Air forgot to be shy. She looked at her father in a daze. Her pretty eyes were wide open. She had never thought that she would be married off just like that. Clap, clap, clap. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji clapped together. It's the Black Devil indeed. So clean and neat. I can't help but be impressed. Today was a good day to have won the war and the scenery was beautiful. Furthermore, there were many brothers here and two supreme martial artists as witnesses. Dong Wushang, this is a heaven-sent marriage. Hurry up and greet your father-in-law." Dong Wushang, who was not mentally prepared at all, was like a duck that had been struck by lightning. He did not regain his senses for a long time. "Just kowtow." The Black Devil waved his hand again. His voice was still as sinister as usual, but there was a hint of a smile on his face. "Go." Chu Yang kicked the back of Dong Wushang's leg, and he fell to his knees with a plop. Dong Wushang still hadn't come to his senses, and was about to get up in a daze. All the brothers swarmed forward and held Dong Wuxiang down, and flipped him over to the ground with a plop. Luo Kadi and GMO held his shoulders, and Xia Danxiong held the back of his waist, pressing him forward. Bao. Mo Tianji dragged his words. Everyone exerted their strength. Rui Butong held Dong Wuxiang's head. He was completely taking revenge. He smashed Dong Wuxiang's head into the snow as if he wanted to smash through the ground. I said that I was typing with 2 fingers, but you didn't believe me. I have witnesses. When I saw Dark Mountain last time, this guy was so shocked that his eyeballs almost popped out. You're actually typing with 2 fingers? You're even competing with me? You actually beat me every time? Chapter 7:11. Poof, poof, poof. Dong Wuxiang's head was held by Rui Butong and smashed onto the ground like a battering ram, causing snow and ice to fly everywhere. Dong Wuxiang's head, which was already dizzy, became even more muddled. His head smashing onto the ground represented 3 kowtows. Rui Butong felt good all over. Damn, this is so satisfying. The ceremony is complete. Mo Tianji dragged his words. This temporary master of ceremonies had obviously simplified all the procedures. What's done is done. What's done is done. Chuyang nodded. Son-in-law, please rise. The Black Devil was obviously inexperienced as a father-in-law for the first time. He grinned and even messed up the way he addressed Dong Wuxiang. When this sentence came out, those who didn't know would think that it was this father-in-law who was kowtowing. Everyone cheered with a loud bang. Dong Wuxiang stood up and turned around in a daze. He met everyone's gaze. Mo Lei shyly bowed to Dong Wu Lei, and then the couple knelt down together and kowtowed to Dong Wu Lei and the Black Devil. This could be said to be the simplest wedding in history, and it was completed just like that. Second Master Dong seemed to have woken up from a dream. He scratched his head and his eyes were still filled with disbelief. So, from now on I also have a wife? Mo Lei hummed shyly. He patted Dong Wuxiang's shoulder and said earnestly, Wuxiang, you're going to be taken from now on. You need to be more vigilant when you hunt for food. You need to clean up the aftermath. Dong Wuxiang nodded. This sentence provoked countless punches. The brothers laughed and scolded him. They pressed GMO into the snow and beat him violently. It seemed that this wasn't enough to vent the excitement in their hearts. After a long time, GMO was rescued by Huyan Ao Bo. Chuyang touched his chin and said thoughtfully, Ao Bo, from what GMO said, he is a little familiar with this. He's so experienced. But I believe that GMO is definitely not that kind of person. Huyan Ao Bo was stunned. She immediately looked at GMO fiercely as if she wanted to eat him. GMO wailed, Boss, you're killing me. The time to leave finally arrived. Wuxiang, I'll make up for it next time. Wuxiang, there are so many beauties in the upper 3 heavens. Wuxiang, when it's time to strike, when it's time to strike, strike. Be careful, don't let sister-in-law find out. Even if he finds out, he has to deny it. Emoler's face was flushed red. She pulled Dong Wuxiang's hand and ran away as if she was running for her life. She didn't even dare to look back. Wuxiang, you must remember that I, Butong, have an illness. You must cure him. Jimo's words made Rui Butong unable to restrain his anger. He turned his head and fiercely bared his teeth. Everyone burst into laughter. Some of them even laughed so hard that they clutched their stomachs and squatted on the ground. The black demon opened his mouth and laughed so hard that his wounds hurt, but he still laughed. In his entire life he had never felt so happy before. It seemed that as his cultivation disappeared, his heart gradually lost its original coldness. The sorrow of parting had vanished without a trace. After a long time, the black demon clutched his stomach, which was hurting from laughing. He felt the pain and the twitching wound. He thought to himself, everyone says that when a daughter gets married she will feel a little sad. This is really nonsense. I don't feel sad at all. Sigh, mother of my child, if only you were here to accept my daughter's and son-in-law's greetings with me. Don't cry. In the distance, Dong Wuxiang, Rui Butong and Mo Lei, who had gone down a mountain, stood still and looked back. I'm going. I won't disappoint you. The base for our battle against the heavens is in my hands. I must build it. Wait for me. I'll wait for you. Dong Wuxiang touched the 4 small jade bottles that Chuyang had secretly stuffed into his arms. Inside were life-saving elixirs. He remembered the last sentence that Chuyang had said to him, everything is not important. Protecting yourselves is the most important thing. Dong Wuxiang smiled slightly and finally moved. The three figures flew away as if they were flying, disappearing from this world. Although Chu Yang didn't prepare anything, how could he not give his brother a congratulatory gift when he got married? These 4 incomplete heavy elixirs were Chu Yang's heartfelt gift. Only Chu Yang and a group of people were left on the mountain peak. The people from the big clans had all disappeared. After laughing, everyone felt a little sad. But no one showed it. The water in the lake of despair suddenly started to churn. As if a pot had been opened, it started to boil more and more. Everyone widened their eyes in shock as they looked at the churning lake water. They didn't know what was going on at all. The calamity sword in Chu Yang's dantian suddenly shook. Then it shook again and again. Slowly, from slow to fast, it spun violently and uncontrollably in Chu Yang's dantian. As if it couldn't wait to fly out, but it had some kind of fear and didn't dare to fly out. The sword spirit in Chu Yang's consciousness seemed to have felt something. Its whole body started to tremble violently. There was a look of heartfelt fear on its face. To be able to make a spirit that had faced life and death for tens of thousands of years reveal such an expression was simply unbelievable. Chu Yang's face was calm. Of course he felt the change in his body and knew the reason. The 4th fragment of the calamity sword was about to be born. His birth this time was indeed a life and death calamity for him. The sword spirit was afraid. Even the calamity sword was afraid. What did this mean? Sword spirit, you're afraid? Chu Yang said with concern. Yes. I can't not be afraid. This is the life and death tribulation that Lord set back then. You sigh. The sword spirit sighed. Chu Yang was silent for a while. Then he said, Sword spirit, I need you to do me a favor. What favor? The sword spirit asked. Chu Yang chuckled. Okay. The sword spirit gritted his teeth. Chu Yang smiled. Then he leisurely walked towards his brothers. He didn't show anything on his face. He just smiled and looked at Gu Duxing and the others. Then he said in a brisk voice, let's quickly take care of this matter. After all, there's still a large area at the foot of the mountain waiting for us to take care of. When this matter was mentioned, everyone became excited. That's right. In this decisive battle, all the enemies would be taken care of. All the forces at the foot of the mountain are waiting for us to take over. From now on, the entire 3 heavens will belong to us. This was a situation that had never happened in thousands of years. Thinking of this, everyone felt an itch in their hearts. Only Tianji looked at Chu Yang thoughtfully. His brows slightly furrowed. He suddenly started to worry for some reason. Chu Yang's expression and tone didn't change at all. However, Tianji still felt that something was wrong. As for what was wrong, he couldn't tell. He could only think hard at one side. Before we go down the mountain, I want to remind everyone of something. Chu Yang said lightly, our clans have finally won the battle of the 3 heavens. However, it's not uncommon for both sides to suffer losses due to unequal distribution of the spoils. I hope that this won't happen to you. Ao Xie Yun and Xie Danqiong looked at each other and smiled. They said, Boss, don't worry. If anyone dares to do this, we'll attack him together. We won't recognize him as a brother anymore. Tianji will calculate the distribution of the spoils and then distribute them uniformly. Chu Yang said, does anyone have any objections to this? No objections. Everyone shouted in unison. It's good that you don't have any objections. Chu Yang smiled with relief. Tonight we'll stay for one night. We'll go down the mountain tomorrow morning. Chu Yang laughed. He was in a good mood. Although we've sacrificed a lot in today's battle, we've also gained a lot. Tonight, brothers, let's gather together. Let's drink together with the heroic spirits at the battlefield. All right. All right. All right. All the brothers became enthusiastic. Even Gu Duxing, who had always been cold, revealed a rare smile. Tianji's brows furrowed even tighter. However, he lowered his head so no one noticed. Chu Yang was so normal that he couldn't be any more normal. Even his gaze, facial expression, facial muscles, and body movements were the same as usual. However, Tianji still felt that something was wrong. Furthermore, this feeling was getting stronger and stronger. Tianji was deep in thought. Facing the lake of despair that was boiling for no reason, he was deep in thought for a long time. He didn't even hear lonesome Luo Kadi greet him. That night everyone took out good wine. Although it was cold, everyone still drank in full swing. After 3 rounds of toasting, everyone returned to their own tables and started to drink to their heart's content. Chu Yang, Tianji, Ao Xie Yun, Gu Duxing, GMO, Luo Kadi, Xie Danqiong, Xie Danfeng, Tan Tan, and Huyan Abua occupied a big tent. They sat around a big table. Hearing the cheers outside, all the brothers were very excited. Chuyang drank his wine. Not long after, he was already tipsy. As for Dong Wu Lei, Luo Kuwu and the others, they were with Ao Tianxing and the others. We've won this battle. Chuyang, who was holding his wine bowl, seemed to have thought of something. He put it down again. His expression became serious. However, I've also discovered many problems from this battle. I've also gained many insights. He looked at the few people in front of him. It's related to all of you. Seeing Chuyang's serious expression, everyone couldn't help but put down their wine cups and look at Chuyang. During this period of time, Chuyang rarely put on such a serious face. Now, on such a joyous day, he said something like this. There must be something behind it. And it must be serious and serious. Everyone's spirits were lifted. They looked at Chuyang with serious expressions and listened to him go on. Mo Tianji held his wine cup and slowly turned it in his hand. His eyes were downcast and his expression was serious. He still hadn't figured it out. Apart from Tan Tan and Gu Du Xing, all of you can basically be considered as the top of the three heavens. Whether it's the progress of your cultivation or your state of mind, all of you are very stable. At this rate, it won't be difficult to achieve something. But it's still not enough to reach the peak. The difference is too great. Chuyang said indifferently, so, this battle has exposed your shortcomings. It makes me feel like there's a fishbone stuck in my throat. Boss, if you have something to say, feel free to say it, everyone said in unison. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.